I mean, it was the first half of 2020. He came in like middle of 2020. And then for the next 6 months, all the messages were like stuff that was heavy. It was all stuff about the events, the major events of the shift, especially the events leading up to the big flash of light, which they say is the moment that we will look back on and say everything changed. And then after that 6 month period, like literally January 1 of 2021, then everything changed. And then they started talking about what is an angel and how do they help human. They did this kind of whole relationship building time where they were talking about other things. And then since then, it's like they change topics depending on their overall goal. All of it has been trying to guide us towards our awakening. But the stuff they talked about right off the bat, like the heaviest stuff, they talked about a big earth rift, which is, they said it would be, and this was very, it was earlier in when I was channeling. My channeling was not as fluent as it is now. It was a little more rough. But I'll tell you, it came out of nowhere, and it was that it was somewhere in the Indian Ocean, India. They said Indian line near ocean. I since looked, and sure enough, there is a fault line that goes right down the Indian Ocean. And I had dreams about it as well after I channeled it, that it would be somewhere near Indonesia. So like, I think it's going to be right in that area. So it could be inside the ocean itself, and a very, very significant earth rift. And I think this is, the angels have since said that the fixtures of the earth would not be the same. So I think that this is part of a overall, like a lot of movement of the tectonic plates is coming. And so major shifting of large land masses, which is crazy to think about, but that's one of the things they led with.
Well, so the big thing, though, I mean, that's one thing. But what you just said about the major event with the light,
Yeah.
that's, if people haven't heard you before, that is traumatic. Of course, earthquakes and earth rifts are also major things, but the light that's coming sounds like a solar flare. Would that be it, or what would
So
you say?
they've described it as it's a solar energy. So it is coming from a star. It could be ours, but probably some other star. And some people think it might be Betelgeuse, which is like, as I heard that, like I started hearing about Betelgeuse last year sometime. The message about the flash of light first came earlier, like in that 2020 period. And they've talked about it a lot since then. But Betelgeuse is another star that supernovaed, which is like when a star dies and it huge explosion. And this happened, it would have happened in our like 1400s, but it takes so long for the light to travel to us that it would have been on its way this whole time. And we would only begin to see it sometime in the astronomers all say sometime in the very near future. Could be weeks, it could be a couple of years, but we are right in the window when we would expect the light from that supernova to hit the planet. So some people think it might be Betelgeuse. That's the name of it, the star, the supernova. But yeah, so they said it would be rainbow starlight is how they described it. So, and then after they said that, I saw that there were some of the auroras that were, how we've been getting auroras. It's kind of like literally like in the Bahamas, they're seeing aurora borealis or something. It's like everywhere, that in some areas, it literally was rainbows in the sky. So, I mean, I think it's going to be that, but much more intense and lasting for a period of time. Yeah.
So, like I talked to you, other people have predicted these light ramphas at 10 days of light. But so whatever's coming, it's coming soon, is what you
Yeah.
want people to know. Like you think by the end or of 2026, which is
That's my
about.
guess. That is not channeled. The angels do not do time, but they have said, so that the way that they've kind of given me the messages is they've given us a lot of breadcrumbs where they've said, okay, these are the events that are going to happen. Some of the events have already happened. And so some of the things and the things that have happened exactly the way the angels described, like uncannily so, in a way that, and it's really funny because here's the crazy thing about getting channeled information. When it's outside of our expectation, I would hear it and I would apply it to the way I see the world today. And only in retrospect, after it happened, I would be able to see how they said it as clear, as plain as day, but I just didn't have a frame of reference to put it in. So
So
I
give me an
misunderstood it.
example of that, what you're talking
So,
about.
so for example, when they first said that truck drivers would abandon their routes, it sounded like a very specific and strange thing to say. And at the time, I was thinking it was going to have something to do with COVID and riots. And like, I thought it was going to be, they were going to abandon their routes because it wasn't going to be safe to drive. Like that was back then when I first got that message in 2020, I was like, oh, maybe it's because it's not safe. So the truck drivers won't drive their trucks. And that could be why. Turned out it had nothing to do with that. I was seeing it from the perspective of what I was hearing in the news at the time. And it turned out to be that they were voluntarily, and it wasn't a single truck driver. It was like an organized, and it was both. It was, some of it was organized, where we had, truck rallies where they were driving across the country in Canada, and then they were trying to organize rallies in the United States. There was, 100,000 truck drivers that didn't show up in the UK because the UK pulled out of sorry, I'm blanking, but since the truck drivers were no longer able to get into the country. And so there's all of these examples. There was also the fact that lots of people thought that the supply shortages were because of the ports. It turns out that it was the truck drivers that were the one of the issues, is they couldn't get enough truck drivers to take the stuff from the ports out to where it needed to go. So truck drivers for a period there just kept showing up in ways that I could never have expanded my anticipation, my understanding to encompass everything that they meant, and to even realize that truck drivers would become such a pivotal part of what happened during 2020, that they were such a pivotal part of the story.
But this is much bigger than truck drivers. This is huge. This is what you've said in the past. This is a planetary event, and everyone will witness it.
Yeah.
So again, we might not have the awareness of what that actually means, but it sounds phenomenal. I mean, it sounds like it is what you're saying. It is the moment where history changes. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. It is the moment where we change, which is much more important, because then we make history. Like, it's one thing to have history change. It's another thing to say, who are the history creators? It's us. And if we change, then history is different forevermore. Right. And that's the thing that's, they have said, like, how is it that we're meant to become, like, the ultimate goal, as they say, is that we are meant to become galactic citizens, that we're meant to reconnect to our origins back out there. But the only way we can do it, they said, is that before they will come to us, especially specifically talking to you and your expertise and your deep knowledge on that subject, that they've said that we have to have world peace. Before they can come, we have to achieve world peace. And there's no way we can do that. If you look at the world right now, there's no way, unless we are different. Like, so we would have to change in order to achieve world peace. And that's exactly what's going to happen.
Well, we have to, and the only way you're saying we're going to change is with this light. I mean, that's nothing else has worked so far.
Yeah.
So, and are they doing this, or are they predicting that it's coming? Or is it this universe itself telling us? I mean, why is this coming now? Because we have to change, yes, but is this something that's generated by a force so we can change?
Well, when I have asked, like, what is driving the shift in consciousness, they say it's the earth herself, that the earth herself is ready to shift into a higher frequency. Just like we clear things and we go through, leveling up our consciousness, she is going to lift her consciousness, and we are on the earth. So she moves to a higher frequency. In order to stay here, we have to match that frequency. So she's the driver. And we, being on the planet, we are like the neurons of the earth. We are her thoughts. And if she needs to level up her thinking, well, then we got to scrub our thoughts. we got to raise our vibe, and we got to match who she is. So what they've said is that we have the rest of our natural lives. We have the rest of our lives as they will play out as we have agreed on this planet to shift our consciousness. But then once we leave, no one can come back to the planet who is not in alignment, in resonance with her higher frequency. So you can only reincarnate here if you have shifted your vibration.
Or reincarnate somewhere else.
There's another planet, right? There's another, and there's absolutely no judgment in that, which is so important to know, that some souls will know that for themselves, that they will make faster progress if they stay within a karmic construct. And so they will choose to go to the other planet, because there they can continue the journey that they're on and hopefully make faster progress than they will here when those constraints are gone.
But what you said about it coming from the earth is the message that the Kogis put out recently. Did you see that message from the mother?
No.
Oh, they've said that towards the end of what you're predicting, the end of 2026, if we don't change,
Yeah.
the Earth is going to come in and do whatever. But the light's coming from outside the Earth,
Yeah.
but there's obviously a relationship between the Earth, which is a conscious being, and other solar bodies or galactic.
Yeah.
So this thing is coming, and you've also said it's going to be really when it looks like it's the darkest, right? So talk about what may precipitate all this happening.
Oh, you mean in terms of what kind of events are leading up to it?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we are in a process of unwinding and the thing is to recognize that there's a lot of difficult stuff that we have already been through, starting with 2020. We've been on a pathway where, you can call it the poly crisis. We are like the frogs in the pot of boiling water, where it's, it used to be that when something bad would happen, it would be on the front page of the news for weeks. Hurricane Katrina, we were talking about it for weeks. And now horrible things happen and they're on the news for a day. And then tomorrow it's a different horrible thing. That it's the pace of crazy has just gone up and up and up and up. And this is on purpose. There is right now, the phase that we are in is the moment to heal. This is our opportunity for us to do one of the most important things we can do on Earth, which is to understand ourselves. So we are being put in a place where we are being squozen like never before, both personally and and for humanity, within our culture, within our broader societies, within the global consciousness. We're being squozen. So we're being drawn into increasing polarity. And this is for the purpose of bringing things up to the surface. So think about how many social movements we've had, that things that have always been talked about but never brought to the surface, things that were always sort of pushed down. We had the Me Too movement, we've had the Black Lives Matter movement, we've had all these things that were just brushed under the rug for the longest time, that finally came up to the surface to be said, like, this is who we have been, this is who we are. And those are incredible clearing, purging moments. And the reason this is so important is that this lifetime is unlike any other lifetime we've ever had. That every other lifetime we have come to the planet, we plan our lives, and we decide before we come in, we say, okay, in this life, I would like to work on, this particular experience. I want to experience myself in this way. And so in order to do that, I have 2 or 3 other past lives that will help me to ground in those energies, where I know if I need to have this wound and this wound, I can pull them up from these other past lives, and we will draw those 2 or 3 lives into this life. And we will usually lay the groundwork for those in that between birth and age 7. And it usually be through our parents. And that's kind of how we structure a life. And I've seen all this. I've seen it in my dreams. I've seen myself planning this life in my dreams and seen all how this happens. So, but in this life, it's totally different. In this life, the Akashic records are open. That was not the case in the past. And in the past, very few people actually had access to the Akashic records. This life, everybody, you can go as deep as you want to go. And that's because, so this is like the bonus crazy round, the bingo round, where you can grab as many things as you want, like how much can you clear? And it's not really about clearing, is a word we use in healing, but it's really about integrate. It's how many aspects of yourself can you draw to you and integrate and understand. And the reason for this, the best metaphor I can think of to say, why do we want to do this? Why do we want to throw ourselves into our own healing? Which is like, this is the period right now, is like the critical time for how can we heal ourselves and how can we heal society? That when we are on the other side, a soul that does not know itself well on the other side looks like a blurry, fuzzy soul. Looks like a soul that is, more like an incandescent kind of glowy light bulb, sort of a soft glow, and that's a soul that and that's because if you think about the light of the soul is like all these different rays of light that are all going in all different directions, right? There's like, here's an aspect of me, and here's an aspect of me, and here's an aspect, and it's just this soft glow. None of them are really owned. And then when a soul gets to know itself, it begins to take all those pieces and bring them in. And gradually that light becomes increasingly coherent, where all of those pieces become part of your central column of light. And what ends up happening is that soul becomes crisper and crisper, like a laser beam, where you become this polished, bright spark of light, right? And that is a soul that knows itself. And that is the work that we're doing, because we're trying to get to the place where we understand who we are. And now is the time to do it. So this is why things are getting increasingly crunchy. It's a big piece of it. The other big piece of it is that in order for evolution to happen, you have to free up energy. And energy is constant. We can't add energy to the system or take energy away from the system. So the only way to create the energy needed for a huge evolution of consciousness is to break apart the old systems. We have to free up energy from the things that have been heavy in order to provide energy for the huge shift that's coming.
Well, okay, I have a couple of questions. And I'm not saying it's not important, but why is this important? What is the purpose of this evolution? I mean, we all come from source, we go back, and we're in this process, which is sort of an illusion, a Maya, but somehow it seems we're here to do that and it's important, but why is it important, if that makes sense?
Why is it important to know ourselves? I mean, I think that is why we
and become a crystallized soul, because it's all the source anyway, playing with its own illusion, or maybe it's not. Maybe that's just a very limited way of thinking about it. So why is this? Why
do we do it? Yeah. I think it all stems from the reason why we were birthed as souls to begin with, which is that concept of, imagine being in a completely dark room by yourself, all the lights turned off, you're in a sensory deprivation chamber. You have no feeling, you have no thought, you have nothing outside of you. You just have you. And you're in that space. You can't feel your body. You can't feel your surroundings. You're literally just alone with your thoughts. And so in that space, imagine this is source in a sensory deprivation chamber. And source says, who am I? Like, I'm floating in this nothingness. Who am I? Like, where am I? Who am I? What am I doing? What is this place? What's happening to me? Who am I? Right? Always coming back to who am I? Well, the only way to understand yourself in that context is to be able to see yourself from the outside, to be able to look back at yourself, right? To see yourself from an outside perspective. So in that moment, source comes apart and becomes two, right? And in that moment, it's literally like the way that they show it to me is that, and this is true on every single level, that it's literally like if you've ever played pool and you have the white ball and you've got the triangle balls and you hit the white ball hits the triangle and boom, all the balls go all at once. That this is what happened, that this is like the Big Bang when source says, who am I? And then separates itself, himself, herself in order to see itself, boom, right? The creation of everything. It is that moment, because it's the same thing for us when we decide to incarnate. When a soul decides to come to earth and make one life, you don't make one life, you make all lives at the same time, because there is no such thing as time. So you say, I want to incarnate on earth. And they say, great, you're going to have 1,245 lives. That's the pool, right? You hit the ball and boom, there they all are. They're all happening all at once. So the big question at the beginning of it all was, who am I? So each of us, in that process of that question, it's like it unfolds and it unfolds and it unfolds. We have the initial question of who am I? But then it says, okay, if I am that, well, how do I be that when I am a poor Hungarian father? How do I be that when I'm a perpetrator of heinous crimes? How do I be that when I see it from all these different angles, right? When I see myself as, the young child who dies of like leukemia, how do I behave? What is my life, my experience? Who am I when I'm put in this particular kind of box? That is how I understand myself. And it's the process. It all stems from the original question from source of who am I? Because we are all source. But every time you take it a step, it opens up almost another question of, okay, great. Well, if I'm at that in this life, who am I if I play the opposite role? And it can continue to expand and expand and expand and add, forever until we begin this process of taking all the pieces and bringing them back in. And the goal is to expand all the way out like a breath. Everything comes back to, we can understand everything from the human body. We have the inhale, expand as big as you can. And then the exhale, bring it all back to center so that at the end, we all come back and unify back with source.
Right. So the purpose of consciousness, from what I've heard, is to know itself. I mean,
Yes.
the consciousness. And so this process of humans awakening
Yeah.
is a way consciousness will know itself. And yet there seems like there's a force outside of us because we're not getting it. So because we're not getting it, this other thing is going to come in and do like an intervention. Would you say it's like an intervention of a sort, or is this a natural phenomenon that would happen anyway? It's either we're prepared or not, because there are people now prepared for a big shift.
Yeah.
Are actually shifted to that level. So
Yeah. There is a certain amount of like, where is humanity going to go from here? Like there is a certain amount of like, are we ready to come along with, like, Earth is going, the ship is leaving, right? Earth is going to be shifting to a new consciousness. Do we get to stay on planet Earth as a collective, or do we not, And so there is a truth to it that we as humanity have to achieve a certain level of consciousness in order to, it's physics. It's like, if you can't resonate, if you can't play a high enough pitch instrument to be in that orchestra, you can't be in the orchestra, or you're going to sound like the turd in the punch bowl. You got to match, And so there's truth in that. We have this life to get it sorted out. And I think it's looking pretty good, and we're going to have this flash of light is coming to help us. We have this massive awakening you think we're having a lot of awakening now, just wait. Like it is going to be like a sea of people waking up.
So what do we need to do to prepare? I mean, yes, people are talk about because in your mind, there's no doubt that something is happening. And Bashar didn't say a flash of light, but he says there'll be open contact. Other people have said things. So how do we best prepare for this huge, huge shift?
The biggest thing that we can do that's going to shepherd us through these changes with ease is to understand that we have to trust and have faith that we are creating our own reality. And we have to understand that even though things may be very difficult externally, that there could be craziness going on outside, to not get sucked into the crazy. And when you need to, pull down the blinds, close the door, go internal, focus on love. This is the most critical thing that we need to do, is focus on love internally. Work on your own integration of yourself, on self-love, and work on that. That's the number one most important thing. The second most important thing we got to do, like they said, the flash of light is available to everyone. What determines whether or not we move into the flash of light or we resist the flash of light is the degree to which we are willing to release what is. And so, is there anything that you are so attached to? I was just thinking about this the other day because I was listening. I'm into dreams, and I like to listen to other people's dreams on YouTube. And I was listening to this person talk about that she had a dream that was like, I don't know anything. I'm sorry. I don't know much about the Bible at all or different religious texts, but there's a story about a woman who turns into salt because she turns around and looks that you know what I'm talking about? She's going.
Yeah. They were leaving Sodom and Gomorrah, and they said, "Don't look back," and she does. Yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I think she's probably turning around to like look to see if her kids are coming, or to look to see, like, whatever reason she's turning around to look to see. Well, I think that is a metaphor for this idea of we need to lean into what is new, to open up to what is new, which, by the way, we cannot perceive unless we are willing to let go of what was. That we are going to be seeing things that are outside of the realm of our expectations. And if we are looking for what we expect to see, we will not see it. So the idea that we can turn our back on it if we are looking for what we expect to see, if we're turning around and saying, well, wait, okay, yeah, I'm totally willing to come, but let me just go get my 5 suitcases, right? I want to bring these. I can come, but I want my collection of spoons that I gathered from all over the world, whatever it is, right? We're like, what if you're really like heartbroken because something big has happened and you've lost something you care about, right? And if you cannot let go of that, you are not open to perceive what is new. So this concept of release and allow, they tell it to me over and over again, release and allow.
You've said two, well, from what I'm hearing, two different things. First,
Yes.
we create a reality,
Yep.
and then there's things we can't perceive. We have to. So that seems like a contradiction. If people are creating the reality of what they want to hold on to, that's the reality they're creating. So there's this other thing that's
Mhm.
creating the reality for us because we're not going with the flow. I mean, so it sounds like a bit of a contradiction. You know what I
No, it's
mean?
actually so yeah, thanks for bringing it up, but no, it's actually so let me go back and show the difference between the two. So option one is we decide that we're attached to the way things were and we're focused, our expectations are focused on that. Our awareness is focused on that. We are creating more of that, but that is in the process of disintegration. It's in a process of loss. So that is our experience. If we let go of that and we allow ourselves to move into the flash of light, they say the flash of light will take us up the staircase, but it will not push us through the door. That is the choice. And the choice, we resist the door if we're attached to what was and we're staying in that lower frequency. When we go through the door, then all of a sudden we go through this truly metamorphic process that is going to happen to our bodies. In that process, this is way out there, but it's so cool, is there is a second aspect of us. This is the first time it's ever happened in human history. We were born with two aspects in the same body of our soul. We have our lower frequency self and we have this higher frequency self, which has been there all along. And when we go through this process, the higher frequency self is born like a new consciousness that comes out of us. And from that higher perspective, we begin to create the new reality, which will be outside of our expectations. They said that after we move through this process, we will come through it and we will feel like we have brain fog. We will feel like things are fuzzy and we can't quite see and it will be confusing. But it's not because there's anything wrong with us. It's because the new reality does not fully exist yet, that we are in the process of creating it as we move into it.
So I think how I understand this is, yes, we create a reality, except we don't, because on the human level, on the ego level, we don't create it, but this higher aspect of ourselves is pushing us towards evolution, and that's really the reality we're creating. Is that sort of what you're saying? Because on the lower level, obviously, we're not creating reality because we're not creating the flash of light on the ego level, right? You
So
know,
great question. It's both. It's both. It is within, it's almost like we are inside of a bubble. And then inside of the bubble, we are creating a reality within the context of what's possible inside the bubble with all the materials that are available to us. We create with what's here. Like we create through resonance, but we can only resonate with things that exist within the bubble that we're in. But who creates the bubble? And who defines what's inside the bubble? And that's the higher consciousness that defines it. So, but within the bubble, we create. And it's not 100% like the angels intervene. So say, for example, you are in the bubble and you are creating your reality, but the way that that's going to look, it's going to be, okay, you, Alan, say, okay, I am ready for a mind altering experience. It's going to shift me in a profound way. And you are vibrating this out into the world. And so there's all these mind altering experiences that you could potentially line up with. So they play with within the bubble. They help us to make sure that it's almost like I think of it as like bowling, and you're kind of we are bowling, but we've got gutter guards up where the angels are the gutter guards, and but within that lane we can go all over the place.
right. But in the limited bubble that people exist in, the reality is not necessarily working for them anymore. And that's why the angels are coming in and shifting the whole context of Earth reality now, right?
I would say no, that it is the earth. Like I said, the earth herself she's a conscious being and she is just she's ready to move to a higher state of consciousness. So there's never any judgment in anything. That's the thing that I always come back to, that there's never a moment that we are wrong or we are right. We are always just are. And so the idea that we didn't do it right or we're not good enough or that we are somehow like got off the wagon and now they got to kind of give us a big kick in the fanny. I keep saying that word. I can't say that word because it means something else in other countries. A kick in the rear. How about that? That's better. But, but, but so it's not so much that, it's just literally that we are riding along on the earth. And more so than riding along, we are her thoughts. And if she wants to shift, we have to shift. So it's not a thing where where they looked at us, some some higher being said, "Oh, you guys are late. You guys are late to lunch and you get no fruit cup." It's not going to be that. It's going to be okay, if you guys want to stay on this planet, you got to be in harmony with the planet.
But we've also talked about, and you did a great presentation at the Sedona Transcendence Retreat, and
Thank you.
it's going to be in Sedona in March at the Sedona Ascension Retreat. But you've also talked, there's a whole maybe major population on the planet that has no idea about transformation, any of this, and those people are going to have a rude awakening. So talk about that and what
Yeah.
we could do for those people.
Absolutely. And it will be like, it is like, what I have seen is that the experiences that are coming, if you were to come into them with no understanding of the bigger picture, with no conception at all of like where we are headed and why this is happening, that it may be a very, very scary time for a lot of people. There may also, because the frequencies are increasing on the planet, there are, even now, the angels said, like right before this last huge wave of solar energy hit the planet, they told us we were going to be in this onslaught where just like crazy solar flares. All of those are shifting us. So there are people who are being woken up all over the place, who like a year ago, they were like, I was fine, like being an accountant and doing my thing. And then all of a sudden I start seeing crazy visions. And so it's happening now, but it will be even more so. And those people who are resistant to the flash of light and to the energies that are coming may find themselves desperately searching for answers. And so I think what we will see will be an enormous call to the spirit. People are going to be looking, and that's why all the light workers are here. Like the go time is after the flash of light. Like that is when so many people are going to be needing help.
Okay, that is the end of that clip there. Let's see, Neil, are you looking at this? Can you just like remove that there? Okay, so I thought that was really interesting because it seemed like there's this transformation. What do you think, Michelle?
That was
Ron?
it was very profound. And as always, Alan, one of the things I respect the most about you is you have very, very deep intuition and you're very tuned in to what's happening all around us. And you're an incredible interviewer. You asked really good questions and really to clarify and break it down to what Anne was saying. And I, I've been feeling this as well since 2020. And I've had, people in my own family challenge me with, if you're so love and light and you're all being happy and you're saying you're predicting, you're in charge of our own reality, like she said, we're creating our own realities, then why do you talk about some things that are kind of doom and gloomy? And
Right.
and it's a fine line that we're walking, because we are feeling that there's a lot of things happening all at once. But we also have to have an open mind to see them. And in some areas, we can get ourselves stuck in the mud if we don't open our minds and our hearts. And
Right.
I love that she brought us back to love, that you have to, she said, you have to trust and have faith that we are creating our own reality and work on ourselves first and always focus on love. That was a huge
What?
takeaway.
And that's not doom and gloom. I think what she's saying is that experience is about looking at the new opportunities that are coming to us. So we're creating a reality, but we're only creating a reality that we know. And we're also, because our consciousness is an open system, it's always being fed by the unknown. So we're here to interface with more than what we already know. And this is a big shift. Yeah.
Yeah. And look at what is happening around the world, with very quickly, she was talking about all this chaos and horrific stories, and they're not lasting for a long time. They go on to the next. I mean, yesterday, Dana Micucci, at the end of her presentation, she did a meditation for, and there were so many areas she's bringing in,
Yeah.
Israel and Palestine. She's bringing in the hurricanes, and she's trying to include every place, Florida, North Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee. She was trying to, she threw in Mexico too. A lot of people don't even know that there were great floods in Mexico as well. She
Right.
did not mention, 100,000 acres of fire in Wyoming. That hasn't really been on the news too much, but it is filling some of my channels. There's so much. Ukraine, I have a channel that I watch with some veterinaries that help animals that are there in Ukraine, and they were showing rockets hitting their land and their animals. There's a lot of chaos happening, but what we're seeing is the higher consciousness of how people are unifying to come together and help each other. And in a lot of areas, it's outside of government. It's people helping people. It's returning to that. If you need something today and I have it, I'm going to give it to you without hoarding it because I think I'm going to need it later. It's that.
This is the future of the planet. This is the future of humanity. This is the awakening of humanity, where we can rely on each other, not some force that we expect to take care of us. Of course, yes, we have government to assist people. It's government supposedly for, by, and of the people. If we can be a people's government, then this is the new future we can create, that everyone will have equality, equal opportunity. I mean, we're moving that way, but I think we need this acceleration. I don't know if this is going to come true. I mean, me and you, we've been around a while. We've heard dozens of people predict these things and that thing, but it does feel like this upgrade of consciousness is coming in some form. This is what Aluna was saying. This is what a lot of people at this, 11 days are talking about, this huge transformation that, yes, we're hoping to create that reality. So we're putting out the intent, and we're seeing what the force of the unknown is going to give us, right? But if we hold the highest as a possibility, then that intent can come from the highest level, I think. Right?
I agree, Alan. And I can think of a lot of situations in my life that happened, that have been happening in the past 5 years, where I definitely felt like I was getting my lessons. And when I look around, and whether it was, through walking my mother home and her death process, and witnessing it from a whole different perspective than when I walked my father home in 2009, and my stepfather died 1/1/2020. It was definitely there was definitely a different vibration with the deepening of our intimacy during that time. And seeing my mom as somebody who was really afraid of death, very, very afraid of death, and finding myself opening my mind to a different understanding than I had previously, of what happens to souls. And, a lot of this information reminds me of but Daniel Brinkley speaks about a lot of these kinds of things.
Yeah, speaking of Daniel Brinkley, and you're saying your mother was afraid of death, it sounds like she was afraid of life, really, your mother. I don't know her, but
she was. She had a lot of fear. She did. She
right.
had a lot of
So
fear.
it's
She would have been Piglet in, but she was a very, very loving person. And I feel that I learned to love through my mother, because she loved so deeply. I do feel that we are talking so much. Many of our speakers are talking about remembering our true eternal nature. That's a big theme being woven through. I know that Eric and I talk a lot on Awakening Code Radio about the only place we can go right now is within. that this is, instead of looking outside and pointing fingers and judging and blaming and shaming, that our job right now is to be good humans and to do good for the sake of doing good, and
Yes.
to keep loving and to go within and do our own inner work, those recesses inside of ourselves that are really giving us an invitation to level up, really up level. How do we up level? And a lot of that comes with unconditional forgiveness, radical forgiveness of
Right.
ourselves.
I just want to address a question by Joran. He says, or he or she, I'm wondering how much energy I should put into investigating what's really going on in the world behind the censorship, or should I focus on maintaining my personal vibration? Yes, because if you focus on that, then maybe you could change the negativity. If I'm able to take in extended focus on negativity while being no need to, what exists is, there is a duality, polarity in the world, but focus on this is my advice, your positive vibration, your love vibration. Lift the negativity, don't focus on the negativity. The Tao Te Ching says, know the dark but stay to the light. So it's not about denying what's going on, but don't get sucked in and destabilize you. Keep your vibration high, and like Michelle says, send love to it all, so you can raise that negativity into the light. That's
And
what I'm saying.
I hear a lot of people speaking about 0 point. And when we break that down, what that looks like is, rather than numbing ourselves out to situations, that we can have awareness but remain neutral. And I think that neutrality amidst duality, we've heard that phrase a lot and used it on our show a lot. Neutrality amidst duality is one of the tools that we can implement to learn to stay neutral without judging others, without judging ourselves. And I'm not saying that I have it mastered at all by any stretch of the imagination. I definitely have had my challenges. But I do feel like what she's saying is there is an invitation there to dig deeper, and to keep bringing us back to love. And
Right. This is the time of transformation. The world is, whatever level you think it is full of awful things and beautiful things. And we're trying to up level it. That's why we're doing the Awakening of Humanity 11 days intensive, because there is a shift that each of us can carry the energy of. And all the speakers here, and this is why I brought Anne in, because there's a chance that if we unify in this love higher frequency, that it can create a ripple effect, perhaps, to those that are not functioning at that level. So yeah, there's negativity out there, but doesn't mean you have to be pulled down into it. Try pulling it up,
yeah,
so
we're all pieces of the puzzle. We really are. We're all pieces of the puzzle. Didn't Aluna say yesterday? I find myself saying this so often, that we would be so boring if we were all alike, exactly alike. We
right.
would be robots, right? If we just all did and thought exactly the same, we would be really boring. And
Well,
that, yeah.
yeah, that's why I'm glad I created you in my reality, Michelle, because really, because you remind me of things that maybe I haven't thought of, or you're bringing in more love, information, perspectives. And yes, we've created each other because there's not really only one consciousness here, and we're all aspects of it, but we're getting to know the parts of each other that we're resonating with and changing the frequency of. So I think it's a great time. It's very intense, and this is that point of shifting. Like, aren't people going to look back and say, what was it like when the world was in that way and they went through this huge change? And this is my hope, in order to bring it to this great other level. One of my favorite quotes is by H.G. Wells. He wrote the book War of the Worlds, but in his later life, he was a real optimist. And he said, one day people will look back at old newspapers or old films and say, was there ever such a world where people, you know, did awful things to each other and just thought of themselves and not the collective? And I think that's the time we're coming into. I think this is what Anne's message was, that we can create a better world. And it's also up to each of us to hold that frequency in ourselves and in our relationships. So
I like there's a message in the chat. I'm not choosing, I'm observing. And I think that this is a time to kind of step outside and witness ourselves, you know, maybe take the eagle eye view of not just looking at things straight on, but actually looking at them over every side of the fence, you know, so that we're putting ourselves in each other's shoes, you know,
yeah.
and instead of looking at somebody and saying, how can you have that perspective? If we can open our mind and just have compassion for, let me hear your perspective. I might not understand it, but be willing to listen and observe our own reactions to that. You know, if we let it get us, and that's one of the things that I've definitely been working on myself, is rather than getting riled up by somebody else's opinion, to let it pass through me. If it doesn't resonate as my own personal truth, I can understand that it's someone else's and let it pass through.
Right.
And keep doing my best to be a good human, to help others, to serve in whatever way that's in my wheelhouse to serve. I'm not going to have every answer. And
Right. I
Alan, I
agree with
say
you.
the same about you that you said about me. You are such a teacher to me. I really appreciate you so very much. Your perspectives have opened windows in my mind that might have been closed before I met you. So I really appreciate that you have that ability.
Well, that's what my program is. If people are interested, on YouTube, is called New Reality. So I'm always looking at how to see the world differently. What is the bigger picture? So my search and quest has been to see as many different perspectives as possible. I may not agree with them all, but at least I've heard them and absorbed them and taken them in and evaluated them in my own terms of priorities. So thank you, Michelle. It's always great to dialogue with you and just to know you and be part of this big family. This is why we're really doing it. We're bringing more people into our family.
Let's
Yeah.
read what Bridget Renee is sharing, because she's
Okay.
sharing some deep truths in the chat, and she shared a few, so I don't want to miss too many.
Okay, good.
She's saying she resonates deeply with neutral love and above. It gives us expanded perception through open observation. It does not mean that we avoid uncomfortable emotions and the atrocities in the world, rather that we view them through empowered lenses. And then she
Thank
said,
you, Bridget.
we always have the power to assist. That assistance comes in many forms or many flavors. Thank you, Bridget. I always resonate with what Bridget shares, and I want to
like
go
it.
deeper with Bridget. I just want to give her a big hug right now and see her face right here on the screen.
I think I mean, assisting. It is us out there. If it's in your reality, it is part of your consciousness. And if you're part of your consciousness, you have the ability to also shift what you're a part of. So with intention and love and hope and possibilities. So that's our job, Michelle, is to remind people and remind ourselves, because I need reminding, So, someone cuts you off in traffic, you just yell or whatever, but, oh, maybe that person was in a hurry or whatever, or needed to do that. So that's simple. I think the end of the old paradigm seems to be, I mean, there's wars happening and awful things, but I think if we really hold the light, and if enough of us do that, that's the prophecy of 144,000 shifting what I say, the paradigm of human thought, then what Ann Tucker mentioned is the light of consciousness. It may not be a light that sweet, but it may be the awakening of who we really are. I mean, we'll see how it shows up.
I agree, Alan. I thank you for giving us that powerful message. I think a lot of people will be taking in those codes and those little seed packets. You know, a seed will sprout from what you shared through what your interview with Anne. I really appreciate that. And
well, she's also going to be at the Sedona Ascension Retreat in March. I'll put more of that in the chat. Here's your next great visionary.
OliverHuntley in the house. Hi, Oliver.
Hello. So beautiful to see both of you, to feel both of your presences here. Thank you so much for opening the gateways and bringing through so much. I was tuning in to the end of what you were sharing there, and it was not only so beautiful, there's so much of what I feel called to share today that completely resonates, aligns, and expands what you both were talking about with the remembrance, with the light, and with what we're doing here.
Yeah, a Gnostic Druid. I'm really interested in what you have to say. So please, let's just continue with Oliver. Thank you, Oliver. Great to meet you and everyone here. Thanks, Michelle.
Thanks, Alan. Oliver, I have to say, I haven't met you in person. I think I probably follow you on Instagram. And I always trust that Neil puts us with the right people that we're here to introduce. And he knows frequency matches, you know, and so I read your bio because I'll be reading it, and I'm really looking forward to what you're going to share today. I know there's many of our speakers so far. What are we at? We're at day 5. Mm-hmm. And many of our speakers are, it's almost like there's this leapfrog thing where they're passing the baton a little bit to the next speaker who's speaking some of the same truths in a different way with their own frequency, their own vibration put on them. And I'm excited to hear what you're going to share. So I will let our audience know who you are. Oliver is a wisdom keeper, author, storyteller, and sacred site guide, currently deepening his connection to the land and mysteries of ancient Wales. He is on a soul mission to bring back lost mystery school wisdom and initiations from the Druids, Essenes, and Celtic Christianity. With 10 years experience holding land-based retreats all over the world, he has the rare ability to take you on an adventure, uniting the worlds of spiritual initiation, historical knowledge, and the wisdom of nature, guiding individuals and groups through sacred journeys. Oliver weaves together sacred stories, ceremonies, and teachings long forgotten, helping you remember and reconnect to the ancestral magic of this land and its holy history. Beautiful bio. I'm just thrilled to hear your presentation. So I just want to get you right into it. Thank you, OliverHuntley. Take it away.
Thank you so much for that introduction, and also just holding this space, holding this gateway open to bring people in, to help introduce people, and really to harmonize the energies. And before I begin, I just really loved what you said, this idea of kind of passing the baton, and everyone gets to share their truth, the ways in which they've received the light, they've lensed the light, and then they get to emanate it out, they get to express it out. And that's such a beautiful way to look at it, because when you were saying that, I was starting to see Gnostic art from the 2nd and the 3rd centuries, where you're probably familiar with the idea of the halo, right? This very interesting idea that when you achieve a certain state of Christed light, or really when you embody a certain level of Christed light, you have a halo come around your head. But if you go back in time and you start to look at a lot of the stories of the halo before it was ever portrayed as this kind of glowing ring around the head, it was always a flame of light. So when you start to look at 2nd, 3rd, and 4th century Gnostic art, what they show is there's generally a teacher in the middle of an audience of people, and they have a flame that's glowing above their head. And then what you'll see in a lot of this artwork is that all the people that are around this kind of teacher, sage, saint, whoever it is that is giving the teachings, you'll see flames above some of the people's heads in the audience. Not everyone, just some of them. And so there's a lot you can take away from that, because how kind of gnosis was shared, or this idea of Christ of light, it was a direct transmission. And what would happen is, if you are open to it, if you are ready to receive certain truths or certain emanations, vibrations, layers of consciousness, frequencies, you name it, that you would then be able to receive it. So in the art, you will see some people receiving that flame, and some people would not be receiving that flame because they were either not sufficiently prepared, not open enough, you name it. But what was also very beautiful about that is, even though the flame from the teacher would be transmitted to the students, the flame would look slightly different when everyone would receive it. So maybe the flame was white from the teacher, and when someone would receive it, some would be blue, some might be green, some might be brighter, some might be dimmer. And it was a great way of kind of sharing exactly what you were saying, is that we're all here to share truth, and we're all here to share how we've embodied our truth, the truths we've discovered, the truths that we're living, the truths that we've experienced. And this transmission of truth is the same for everyone, but how people receive that truth, how we integrate, how we work with that truth will always be beautiful and unique. So something so magical happens, when we gather, whether we're in person and we gather, or in this beautiful kind of digital format of today's age, is that all of the speakers, everyone here, we all hold these flames, these puzzle pieces, these clues, these next synchronicities that we might need. And so you don't even have to get into, this is my truth, I'm right, or this is your truth, you're right. We all are here sharing who we are, what we are, the emanations that we carry. And then everyone will receive exactly what they need. And then they'll continue that ripple, that wave forward, so that you'll start giving out that flame from your head to other people. And it will just continue, and more light will be building up. And that's something I'll talk a little bit more about during our transmission today. So I just wanted to share that, because that was the image that I got from your passing baton. It's beautiful.
Thank you. That feels so good. I could actually visualize and feel what you're speaking. And I really, really appreciate each person sharing their truth in their unique way. The way that you worded that, your verbiage on that really hit home. So thank you so much, Oliver. Have a great talk. I'll be sitting back here listening in the backstage.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, it's such an honor to be here with everyone. And as I was sharing, there is power, when we gather, when we come together. And of course, in ancient times, it was always done in person. But we have this beautiful kind of revolution of technology, of the internet, of the ways in which we can digitally connect with one another. And so we are gathering over these days. You're getting to meet and to feel and to receive from all these different presenters in a way like it's a mystery school. It truly is a mystery school. All these beautiful beings are gathering together. One, of course, to share things that are resonant in our path, things that we think are very beautiful and important on this path to awakening, but also all of us speakers are receiving from all the other speakers, and we're receiving from all of you, because wherever you are in the world, you think of it like the globe. We're looking at the globe. Wherever you are is this little dot of light, and all of us are creating all these dots of light who are tuning into this conference, who are participating over these days. And we're creating this beautiful grid work, this web work of light in the world right now, which helps more light, more energy come down, of course, from above, from the higher realms coming down, but it also helps bring up that geomantic energy from the earth and helps distribute it, disseminate it around the planet. So we are creating grid lines and ley lines just by being a part of this beautiful gathering that we've all said yes to, that we've all signed up. So I just wanted to take that moment to honor each and every one of you who are tuning into this broadcast, who are listening, to all the speakers who are giving and glowing their light. And this is exactly what the world feels like it needs. So thank you to each and every one of you. So my name is OliverHuntley, and I'm very excited to be here sharing about my path, being a Gnostic Druid, but also getting to share with you what I consider some really beautiful and inspiring keys that come from the ancient world, that come from ancient wisdom traditions that I feel are even more applicable, even more relevant now in today's age. And getting to share some of these truths is what lights me up. This is my passion. This is what I've spent so much of my life doing, so many years cultivating, information, wisdom, getting to translate different texts, different, manuscripts, you name it, focusing all around ancient language of Aramaic, focusing around the Gnostic tradition, and especially Celtic Christianity, which was all about the church that was before the church, which we'll talk a little bit about today. And through all of this journeying, through all of this research, I've just come to this point where it just feels like we're both going back in time, connecting to these ancient wisdom traditions, learning, what was truly being transmitted by these great saints and sages and teachers of kind of yesterday, of the past, but seeing how their words, even if they're spoken in another language in a different form from thousands of years ago, they are still speaking to us directly today if we're open to that kind of wisdom. And getting to translate it, getting to update it, getting to make it accessible to people of today is one of my biggest callings, because what this does is it helps prepare the pathway forward. It helps illuminate the path, the steps that we can take. Not that we don't have to do anything, but if we want to move toward a more loving, heart-centered, light-filled, consciousness-filled reality, these steps are being illuminated by all of these great teachers and their words of the past, and we can bring them into our reality today. So this is really where kind of my work, my passion, my dharma, my destiny is all converging, and it just brings me so much excitement to get to be a part of these gatherings and to share these things with all of you. And where my path started, probably similar to a lot of you who are tuning into the call, right? If we think about being on the spiritual path, it must have been very difficult in the old times because there wasn't the internet back then. We couldn't just go on Amazon and order a book. So we couldn't find a kind of the teachings online, the YouTube videos that we have today. It's such a blessing, right? So in the past, it wasn't as easy. But now, like, what a blessing we have where we can sign up to events like this and receive some of these wisdom transmissions. And so I began my path really just hungry and curious to, what were these great ascended masters, these great yogis, these great saints, what were they teaching? I needed to know about it. There was a deep calling, and it put me on a path just to explore all of these great masters, all these very notable teachers from all the world faiths all around the world, from all the different mystery schools. And this is where I started coming across groups of people like the Gnostics, groups and communities of people like the Essenes, which was the group that Yeshua and many other early Christian teachers came out of the Essenes. And it brought me into stories about the Druids, right? An earth-based wisdom, grounded-based wisdom. And I just became obsessed. I knew this was all connected, to my path. And so as I would get more and more into these teachings, I found something that was a common thread, if you will, this kind of golden thread that linked up all of these different teachings. And that's, for me, one of the metrics or barometers that I use is when I find commonality in ancient teachings from different traditions all around the world. Because if they all tend to say the same or very similar things, then you can start to almost receive them with a certain surety or faith. They're like, okay, if they're all saying the same things, there must be something to it. And one of the things that they were all seeming to talk about is that there was a promise of a great awakening. There was a promise of a time that would come when we would return to the light. There was a promise of a time, a prediction, a prophecy of a time that would come when all of us as a collective, our hearts would open wide to the power and to the light of God. And it feels like these prophecies, right, this promise of a great new age, this collective awakening, it certainly seems to be happening now, which is very beautiful. It certainly seems that so many of us are starting to turn to love, back to our hearts, to a path of healing, to heart-centered actions. And so something really beautiful is coming. Something really amazing is happening when it's talking about the return of the light. And so this is what I wanted to share a little bit about today, is what are some of these traditions, especially the ones that I'm very resonant with, like the Gnostics, like the Celtic Christians, like in the language of Aramaic. What were they saying about this great awakening? What were they communicating when they were speaking of this return of this light, this idea of the resurrection of the light? And even the word resurrection in many ancient languages, especially Aramaic, we'll talk about it later on today. There's something really beautiful about this return of this light, this re-embodying of the light. And so I remember when I was younger, I would go to church and I would receive, a lot of the teachings of the priest at the time, and I would read the Bible. But something very interesting happened to me is that it didn't connect. It didn't connect in a way that I was told it should. Like if you read these verses of the Bible or you hear the preacher saying this, right, it's going to cause this awakening. But I remember very clearly when I was younger, it felt like the words were hollow. It felt like what was trying to be communicated through the faith of Christianity, for example, it wasn't bringing the light in a way that my soul felt like I knew it was in there. Like I knew something was there. And I know a lot of us are what I would consider recovering Catholics, right? Or we've been through the kind of religious Christian dogma and we didn't quite receive what we were promised or what we thought we might receive. So we kind of discard it, we move away from it, and we go down other traditions. And that's all part of the great kind of path that we each take. But I was blown away. I can't tell you what a relief it was when I started getting into a lot of the original teachings of Yeshua, of Mary Magdalene, of the disciples, and especially into the language of Aramaic, because it helped bring back something that I knew was so central and so needed to the teachings of the Christ. And why I think that's important, first of all, is just to understand is that there was a being named Jesus, or in its ancient language, Yeshua, but we don't necessarily have to say that even though Yeshua Christ, he wasn't necessarily the Christ, he was an embodiment of the Christ. And so when a lot of these ancient teachings talk about the Christ, they're not saying specifically Jesus, they're talking about this vibration, this level of embodiment, this consciousness that comes from Christianity, from one who truly walks the path of what the Christ represented. And so as I started getting into Aramaic, it became a beautiful restoration of this lost light tradition that had been slowly erased and moved out of the religious, more organized form of Christianity. And so to start tapping into Aramaic, and we'll be talking about lots of Aramaic today as we go through different words and different translations, but it was such a relief to my heart and to my soul to then realize, wow, there was something in there that I always knew and felt. And I think a lot of us probably on some deep level, when we pick up the Bible and we receive a lot of the Christian teachings, even if it doesn't resonate fully or it doesn't seem to reach your heart level, it's like, there's something there. There must be something in these teachings that have persisted and lasted for all these thousands of years. And so by getting back into the original language of Aramaic, they function like keys. That reading the Bible in Aramaic, reading and receiving the teachings of Jesus in the original mother tongue that he spoke in, it returns you back to something that is so needed and so ready for today's world, for today's age. This return to the Christ, not to become a Christian, not that you have to go into any religious faith, but this return to this Christed light that is open and available to us all, the light that returns us to the kingdom of heaven, to the kingdom of God, the light that returns us to our heart, that can restore every part of us that is wanting, that is hurting, that has lost its path. This light illuminates every single thing that we need it. And this is truly at the core of what Yeshua's teachings was, Jesus's teachings. And it feels like this is the Christed light. Again, not religious, not dogmatic, not specific to a certain book or church. This is the Christed light that we're all starting to gravitate toward. This is the light that will call us home. And so what I'd love to do tonight is share a little bit about Aramaic and help you see there is so much to decode. There is so much to re-understand, to reconnect, to resurrect in this language. And it's so beautiful. It breaks my heart in many ways that so many of these original teachings have unfortunately been lost to translation, have been specifically and intentionally put out of the Bible, right? And there's a lot we could say there. Unfortunately, I don't have enough time to get into the full history of how Romanized Christianity emerged, but there is a fascinating story of how that took place. But what we get to see when we get into the language of Aramaic is that the Bible is just a fraction, just a tiny little bit of the true light of what these words of these great early teachers were speaking. And we get to call that back through exploring things like the Celtic Church, through Aramaic, through Gnostic teachings, all these different forms of Christianity that are still there for us if we simply open the door and start to receive this legacy of teachings and traditions. So before I go into Aramaic, I always like to start with one word, and it's a very beautiful word. And this word is the word eighth batak. Eighth batak. So just take a moment if you want. You can either say that out loud or just silently intone it. I like to do this before I kind of give the translation of the word so you can first intuitively feel it, what it feels like to you. To take a moment to say eighth batak. Eighth batak. Eighth batak. So before, when you read the stories of Jesus performing healings, he would always say this word eighth batak before he would begin or perform his healing rites. And there's magic in this word because when you open up this word from the roots in the original Hebraic, what you find is eighth batak means to open, but really it means to be open. To be open. To become open in thy presence. And so why he would say that, the meaning of this word of being open, is it helps us, one, become a vessel, to become a conduit, right? It's like we're opening our grail to receiving the light that wasn't coming from Jesus. It was coming from the Holy Spirit. It was coming from the divine. It was coming from God. And in order for that light, that transmission, that restoration that comes from the divine, you have to be open. If you're closed, it doesn't work. If you're closed, there's no room for malleability, alchemy, transmission, for a transmutation to come through. You have to open yourself. You have to be open in that divine presence. And so the first thing Yeshua would always say is eighth batak. That call, that reminder to be open. And so I say that to all of you as we begin our dive tonight, for us to be open. For us to become those vessels and those conduits that the Holy Spirit can descend inside us and not just stay there, but to continue, flow through us, move through us. And this is how we link up to those divine energies, those cosmic energies. This is why Jesus found it so important to remind people, eighth batak, eighth batak. And so there's much that we can receive from these words, and there's much retranslation needed. Because one of the issues that you find with Aramaic is, one, it's primarily done by hardcore academics and scholars, and bless them, and they're so smart, they're so intellectually, right? They're geniuses. They're people who are going back linguistically and opening this language, and that is so important. It's half the work that I do. But if you just look at Aramaic from a purely intellectual or historical and ancient historical cultural context even, you're missing half the point, because it's also a language of spirit. Aramaic is a language that was referred to as a living language. It was a living language in which spirit would move through. And so you need two lenses to fully receive Aramaic. You need the linguistic perfection, right? Really understanding the Hebraic roots of these words, but also you need the openness and the ways in which spirit can speak through you too. And you bring those two things together, then you have a vibrational key that truly functions on many different levels. And so when we read Jesus's teachings, when we read Jesus's words and we go back in time, right? Because it's been translated so many times. If you think, if we're going back to Aramaic, it would have gone from Aramaic to Greek, from Greek into Latin, from Latin into old forms of English, into new forms of English, right? These things are translated 4, 5, 6 times even. And you get lost in so many ways. You get lost in translation. So to bring it back, we get to go back to this beautiful part of how we can receive the direct, more direct transmissions of Yeshua. So even statements like the I am statements of Jesus, which are beautiful statements that Yeshua would speak of, that Yeshua would emanate. But when we read these statements, the I am statements in Aramaic, when we say the phrase I am, in Aramaic, it's ina ina. Looks like E-N-A, right? Ina, 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 which literally is translating for like the letter I. It's like two I's put together, right? So I. Ina means I. But when you start to break it open, what it's talking about, it's not just saying I. It doesn't make a lot of sense that way. It's talking about the I that dwells behind the I. The you that is behind the you, right? It's not the you that's here. It's the essence of you. It's the being that dwells within you. And it's beautiful to receive a lot of these teachings in that way, because so much of kind of modern day and especially Romanized Christianity has been developed and devised and created as a way to take your power from you, to make your salvation, right? The salvation of your spirit, your soul, dependent on the church. And you can only get to heaven if you do these things, right? That complete institution has taken your power away from you, made you dependent on certain things, made you idolize certain figures, made certain pathways as the only pathway to your salvation. But these were never in alignment with Jesus's original teachings. These are not reflected in any way in his original words. And so even translating statements like the I am statements of Yeshua, I remember when I first read him, it's like why is Jesus saying me, I, almost, kind of in an egotistical way, pointing at himself, but he never said these things, because when you read the statements, Ina, the I am statements, he's not saying I am the way, the life, the truth, the light. He's saying that the being that dwells within you is the way. Ina Varaha, I am the way. He is saying that the being, the essence of you inside, that is the most important part. He was always giving back people their power. This was written into the very Aramaic teachings that unfortunately have been lost in translation, and specifically kind of removed from some of what we hold now as church doctrine. And when we get into other Aramaic words, Aramaic is so beautiful because, again, it's its own language. It's a Syriac language. It's kind of like Hebrew and Arabic put together, but it uses the Hebrew alphabet. And the Hebrew alphabet is really interesting when you look at it, because it functions both linguistically as well as numerically. So you can get both letters and numbers, and there's many different really cool geometric ways of understanding this language. But when you get into Aramaic, in order to really break open a word, you'll find it's kind of like hieroglyphics, in the sense that, when you see a hieroglyphic for a bird, it might not necessarily just mean, oh, that's a bird. There's a story in there. There's a landscape in there that you can open up and move through. And so you'll find that with Aramaic words, is that when you see an Aramaic word, you can translate that one word, but you can also open it up more and more. And that's one of the things that I wanted to encourage all of you, if you do find attraction or a resonance with Aramaic, realize you can keep breaking words open, both to the roots, the Hebrew roots, but even the individual letters themselves. And you get vaster, much deeper understandings of the word. And so another word that's really beautiful that kind of exemplifies this is the word for love in Aramaic. And there were many different forms of love, and you'll find different variations, but one of them is rahumma, 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 which was the Aramaic for love. And so when you look at that word, yes, you could say it translates as love, right? So if you were to receive kind of a more academic translation of rahumma, they would say love. And in many ways, you could say that. But there's more in there. And that's why breaking Aramaic open helps return us even more to the roots of the teachings of Yeshua's, because you might hear there's 3 seed sounds in the Rahumma. You have the Ra, the Hum, and the Ma. And so each of those seed sounds carries with it a beautiful, rich tapestry of understanding. So you have a Ra, the first part of that word. Sounds like the Egyptian sun god, right? Very similar. In Aramaic, Ra is the emanation or the burning forth of light, the light which shines out from the void. Then you have the Hum in the middle, which is sacred feminine center, or womb space, if you will, right? Very interesting that they put almost a masculine form of light next to the feminine essence of the womb. And then at the end, you have the Ma, right? Cosmic mother, feminine principle. And so as you start to work with the individual parts of this word, there's many ways you can receive from it. I wish I had more time to really break it open. But love in Aramaic means the light that shines from the great cosmic mother's womb space, the space in which light first emanates from and all light returns. So it's like this cosmic forever circle force. That's just a very basic translation of Rahuma. So you can see even the word love, when you see the love written in the Bible, Rahuma, yes, it means love, but already you can keep going down layers and layers and opening up more and more and more. It's a beautiful word and beautiful levels to it. And then you get to words that you find have genders, right? So in Aramaic, you have words engendered from masculine to feminine. And there's a really interesting thing that happens when a word is engendered feminine. And so anytime you hear the ta sound at the end of a word, what you know is that word has been engendered feminine. So you have a term like, let's take, for example, the kingdom of heaven. Beautiful term, right? Kingdom of heaven. And a lot of people think the kingdom of heaven and the kingdom of God is the same kingdom, but actually it's very different, especially in Aramaic. There's subtle nuances. We'll see if we have the time to open up both in today's call. But you have, for example, the kingdom of heaven. In Aramaic, Malkuta Dashmaya. Malkuta Dashmaya. This is a beautiful term. This is a beautiful kind of understanding, because what you have is Malkuta, which is the word for kingdom, but you hear that ta at the end of it, right? The engendered feminine form, Malkuta. Then you have Dashmaya. Shemaya is heaven, so kingdom of heaven is Dashmaya. Dashmaya is of heaven. So when you're looking at this word, something really cool happens to it, because when you read that in the Bible, Malkuta Dashmaya, you think of it already, oh, kingdom of heaven. That must mean it's a place, right? There's a place. Heaven, it's kingdom, it's a place. It's physicalized. It's like a noun. But Malkuta being feminized, being engendered feminine, it stops it from being a place or a noun or a thing and makes it an experience, a vibration of something, the essence of something. And so when we have Malkuta, it's not talking about necessarily what you have is a kingdom or a place of heaven. You have the vibrational essence of something. And then you go into Dashmaya of heaven, Shemaya. Shemaya is a very interesting term, because Shemaya is the meeting point between the kingdom of God and the earthly realm. The kingdom of heaven, this is the place when we get into Aramaic kind of mythologies, where a lot of the angels dwell. The angels are the gateways between God and earth. And so you have Malkuta Dashmaya is that meeting point, that channel, that intermediary between how the divine realms connect to the earthly realms, but also how the earthly realms connect to the divine realms. Now, because you have that ta sound, it becomes a vibration, it becomes an essence. And so when you go into this word, the kingdom of heaven is not a place, right? It's not a place that you can seek or you can find externally, physically outside you. It is a place that you must seek first within. The kingdom must be found within you. And the paradox that comes from it, and even though they don't talk a lot about this in the canon Bible, the 4 gospels that we know in today's traditional Bibles, there are over 120 other gospels that were not selected for the Bible. Think about that. 120 more than, but we're still discovering them, and who knows how many in total there were. But there are so many more perspectives on the teachings of Yeshua and his ministry that never made the cut. And when you get into these other gospels, they're known as the apocryphal gospels. You start to get really beautiful interpretations of the words. And so St. Thomas, one of my favorites, he's really cool in the sense that he likes to use riddle and allegory and mysteries to help elucidate, help actually awaken our ability to connect with the divine. And so the paradox that comes out of something like the kingdom of heaven is, in order to find the kingdom of heaven, you must first find it, feel it, vibrate with it inside yourself. And as you vibrate it, as you embody this kingdom of heaven, Malkuta Dashmaya, first and foremost in yourself, your vibration then projects it outward. You accessing the kingdom of heaven paradoxically makes it easier to find in your external life and reality. This is such an important concept in Aramaic, because it is exactly what I feel so many of us are doing in today's world, is that we're learning to start to turn within more and more, to find these vibrational essences in our hearts, in our own field more and more. Because it's so easy to get lost in the confusion, the chaos, right? All the craziness that are happening in the world, especially if you read the newspaper or you turn on the news. There's a lot of things happening, a lot of things that might not on the surface look like they're resonating with love and light. And it can be frustrating, it can make you confused, it can make you feel helpless. But again, this is where some of these original teachings are so key, because it's about turning within. I go within. When the world is chaotic and stressing me out, I go within. And these teachings are helping you go within, not because they're trying to make you bypass it. They're not telling you to bury your head in the sand and ignore it. No, you're going within so that you can vibrate with this kingdom. And the more you, the more myself, the more all of us individually start to vibrate with this kingdom, the more that kingdom then appears in the world, outside of us, externally. The Gnostics would talk about that we have eyes within our eyes, if you will, like the Ina Ina, but they're eyes that dwell within your heart. They're your heart eyes. These are the eyes we must seek. These are the eyes of our heart that we must learn to perceive from. And so the more we open the eyes of our heart, the more we vibrate with this kingdom, the more we can see the kingdom in the world, the more we vibrationally manifest it. And when we're on calls like this, when we're in groups like this, in this digital format, right, we're all called to be a part of this awakening over these days that you get to receive all these different speakers transmitting. We are now collectively vibrating more and more of this kingdom of heaven. The Malkuta Dashmaya is emanating more and more from us. And guess what? This is such a powerful way to affect reality. This is such a powerful way of manifesting that heaven on earth. It's a beautiful channel. And when we talk about, overcoming, right, all these chaotic forces, all the craziness that we see going on in the world, a lot of you have heard of the group of people called the Essenes, right? This ancient mystical group that they say Yeshua, Jesus, came out of, and many other of his contemporaries. This was a group of people, beautiful group. Again, I wish I had enough time to really go into all the different ways that they are revolutionary, not just for their time, but so much of what they hold for today. They were a group of people that organized and structured themselves around one Aramaic word, which is the Aramaic word nura or nahara, depending on the form, which means light. Just as Alan was talking about before, this light, this idea that light is coming back, the Essenes structured themselves around nura, light. They believed that they would cultivate light individually, but collectively as a group. And so Nura carries with it this responsibility that I have a responsibility through Nura to keep polishing and reflecting and refining myself so that I can glow as much light as possible. But it also has a responsibility built in Nura, where I have a responsibility to all of you. And all of you have a responsibility to me. That we have to work together to help each other refine, to heal, to become as luminous as possible. Because when we glow that Nura, we overcome the forces of Satana. 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 Now, what does that word sound like, Satana? Yeah, it sounds just like Satan because that's where the word Satan came out of. But Satana in Aramaic doesn't mean this red lizard man who lives down in burning hell. Satana translates as the force that causes us to forget. The force that causes us to forget who we are. The force that causes us to divide ourselves. Divide ourselves internally, also divide us from each other. This is what Satana means. And so to the Essenes, the more we cultivate Nura, the more we cultivate this light, the more we overcome the forces of Satana. And again, if we're trying to call in this great awakening, this awakening which is already taking place, it's accelerated, it's expanded, it's nourished and assisted by the more Nura that we all cultivate. Again, first inside ourselves, but also all the ways that we can help others, to go into service, into servitude to others, to help each other cultivate as much light as we can, and to do it in groups like this, whether it's physical or digital, cultivate this light so we overcome all these forces of Satana, because this is what leads to this idea of this second coming. And again, when we read the second coming, again, we're coming to the end of our time, so I wish I had more time to go deeply into this, but when we come into Satana, or when we overcome Satana with this light, we are then providing this template, this open canvas in which more light can return, the light can be resurrected, and the more of this light returns to the planet, the more we all return to these great and divine kingdoms that we all know are there, that we're all a part of, and we help ground it down. This is such a beautiful process of what the second coming truly means. When we translate the second coming in Aramaic, it's more like second opening or second blooming, if you will. It's something that happens through each and every one of us. And so this is so much of what the original teachings of Yeshua are about. They're about giving you back your power, helping to empower you back into the light, helping all of us remember this divine essence that dwells within us, not bound by dogma, not bound by judgment, not saying you have to go to here or do this. It's not about boxing you in and saying there's only one way. The way is through your own heart. You are the way. The being that dwells within you is the way. And let all of us journey into our own hearts, whichever way we see fit to do, whichever way we are excited to do. That is the true way. And so you're going to receive all these different teachers on the call, all these different beings who are going to be dropping all these truth bombs onto you, and receive all of them. Be athmatok, be open to them all, and let all of us help you remember what is your truth and your way back to the divine. And let us also honor all the great teachers and the masters who came before us, who also were speaking their truth back then in ways that are so resonant even to today. So thank you everyone for tuning into this call. It opens my heart so much to share more about the words of Yeshua, more about the teachings of these great Essene masters, but really just to help encourage all of you to be open to all the past wisdom, to be open to all the sources of wisdom of today, but ultimately for you to dwell within your own heart and to illuminate that path, rising up more and more. So thank you so much for being a part of this great call and this great conference.
Hey, beautiful, Oliver. Great overview. One question I have is that we have the beautiful teachings of Jesus and Buddha and a lot of masters. Where does religion come in, and why did it come in as a kind of go-between truth and wisdom and what they had to say? How do you fit that in?
Absolutely. So religion's an interesting term because it's not weighted positively or negatively on either end. It becomes almost like a formalization or structuring, if you will, that oftentimes in the past, you would have to go through initiations to awaken into your spirit. And there had to be some kind of ritualized structure that was created from it. And so in many institutions, this kind of formalized structure was very important. It actually allowed so many systems to work. And if it was geared around the heart, giving people back their power, formalized structure coming from these mystical teachings can be a really beautiful, really good thing. But then also you have institutions that would formalize these teachings in a way to control them or utilize them for agendas that are certainly not as loving as we might want them to be. So it's almost like we're trying to take something that's ineffable, something that's formless, something that is so completely cosmic, if you will. And then religion allows you to bring it into a structured, organized, integrated form. But what we do with those religions, and largely the people or the cultures of the time, what they would do with those religions can be a mixed bag. And it can go either way depending on the level of consciousness or the intentions that are behind these religions. And as a kind of a quick follow-up to that, most people, when you speak of Christianity, again, most people have come into contact with Romanized Christianity, right? The Christianity that was birthed from Rome. And again, there's so much in there. I wish I had more time to talk about it. But what most people don't realize was there was a form of Christianity before Romanized Christianity. There was a church that came before the Roman Church, which was known as the Mother Church. And this was Celtic Christianity. This was the entire story of the Celtic Church, where the Grail and many of the disciples went immediately after the crucifixion. Where did Joseph of Arimathea bring these incredible souls? And they went back to the ancient British Isles, where Christianity, before it was ever a form of religion, took root in the British Isles. The oldest churches in the world are in ancient Britain. And this religion, before it was ever a religion, flourished for hundreds of years based on you could say the complete teachings of both Jesus and Mary Magdalene, flourished for centuries before Rome ever kind of got its hands on it and changed things. So it was really beautiful to know that even this idea of structuring mystical traditions can be really beneficial, but it doesn't always end that way. It completely depends on who and what does these kind of formalizations.
Yeah. I don't know about structuring because I like the Gnostic approach, the Druid approach, the Taoist approach, where it's a way of life. It's not following the laws. It's getting us in touch with the universal beingness.
Yes, exactly. Well, that's Gnostic tradition for you. Exactly. Well said. Is that really, to the Gnostics, there is nothing between your heart and God. Nothing. There is a direct channel between your heart and whatever you consider God, and let nothing come in between that. Let nothing affect that, because you have that pure and true pathway to go back to it. And that's what you find in a lot of the original teachings of Jesus and Mary Magdalene. Many, as you're saying, many of the great faiths. It's all about how can you have a direct phone to God, essentially, and let nothing disrupt that connection ever.
Right.
Oh my
No,
God. Tears are coming to my eyes as you deliver that with such grace and elegance and with the true knowing that I experience in my own body. And our chat room is, I don't know if you've seen it, Oliver, but
No, I'm sorry, I haven't. I'm broadcasting from my phone.
I'll tell you that there are so many comments in this chat room. I haven't seen this many from all of the speakers, that people are really, really relating with what you shared and the way in which you shared it. So just know that I'm scrolling. Alan, do you see all the
I
comments?
do, but I want to know where are you located? How do we get in touch with you? Where's more of your wisdom and teachings, Oliver?
Oh, I appreciate that question, Alan. Thank you so much. So a lot of my work, you can go to thegnosticdruid.com or on Instagram, the Gnostic Druid. I'm on there a lot. And so I have a lot of beautiful courses that you can they're digital courses. You can download them. You can do them in your own space. That really goes into the history of Christianity before Christianity, goes into a lot of the teachings of Aramaic. I even have a lot of really beautiful courses about druidry and connecting to the earth, ley lines, dragon lines, you name it. So I have a lot of beautiful offerings and resources on thegnosticdruid.com, or if you go to Instagram, the Gnostic Druid on Instagram. I usually
I
post
know
a lot of
Tyler
my
wants to
there.
say something, but where are you based out of? Where are you located?
So I'm located in Wales right now. So I'm in the Brecon Beacons of Wales. And this is, let's just say, for those of you who don't know about Wales, Wales is a spiritual hub that most people have no idea about. So where so much of the Druid wisdom comes from, Celtic Christianity, you name it. So there's magic in the earth in Wales where I am here.
Well, Tyler wants to jump in here, I think. Go ahead, Michelle.
Congratulations on the birth of your baby.
Oh, thank you so much.
I did see that you're on Facebook as well, and we are friends on Facebook. And I remembered seeing that you had a child, and that you are teaching a course beginning November 4th on the Celtic Magdalene.
That's right.
Yeah. So I wanted to put that out there. Gosh, amazing! Thank you for the start to this. And I know that our brother Adam Apollo is ready to come on, and Tyler's going to intro him in. And Oliver, thank you for what you shared with each one of us. It really brought us back to our hearts, back to our home. And I took a ton of notes. So I'm super excited to dig into my notes and to dig into your website. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. And thank you, Alan, too. Both of you. Thank you for all the things, the magic that you both do. So.
I want to interview you around the Christmas to get the real meaning of Christ's Mass. So we'll do that. I'll be in touch. Okay.
Oh, I'd love that. Great, Alan. And there's Tyler. Hey, Tyler. It's good seeing you.
Yes, Oliver. Great to see you. And I caught a little bit of your presentation there about the latter half of it. I was out. I'm traveling here in England, and amazing stuff, my friend. You're just a true treasure. So absolutely great stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Very welcome.
Oh, God bless all of you. Have a beautiful continuation of this awakening journey, and I look forward to connecting with all of you soon.
Very much so. So, yes, I am Tyler Thibodeau. I'm from the Immersive Podcast. Hello, everybody. And I'm here to bring up a esteemed gentleman whom I've had the pleasure of interviewing once before. He goes by Adam Apollo, and I was so impressed speaking with him when he came on the Immersive Podcast. We talked for a few hours. He is the founder he's involved with Core Nexus, Unified Physics, so many other organizations. I think the thing that we talked about most recently was what he was involved in was the Core Nexus project, I think it was, which has a lot to do with blockchain and taking back one's own data. And I think he's going to touch on a lot of that today. He also goes as a galactic DJ, which I think is amazing. He's such a multifaceted, multi-talented person, which I just love because we all have so many abilities like that are just untapped, waiting to be tapped. And Adam is a shining star of an example of that. So pleased to see you again, Adam. And I'm sure everybody's going to be very pleased to hear what you have to talk about. And welcome, Adam Apollo.
Thanks so much, Tyler. It's really a pleasure to be here with you this morning and to be joining this beautiful, massive, visionary event with Neil and Michelle and Alan. And thanks for the warm welcome. I've been on quite a journey lately, and so I am less interested in talking about blockchain and technology, while my core work is focused on building a planetary operating system.
Yeah.
I'm more interested in sharing today about some of the specific keys that we can use when we're moving through times of tremendous transformation. This is a time of great, great change. And in order to best navigate these times of change and the information overwhelm we're receiving, the many, many different perspectives on what's going on and what do we do and how do we shift and, how do we get through this? It always comes back to the self and how we are personally deeply navigating these things and how we're approaching these issues on the inside. And so that's a bit of what I'm going to get into today. And looks like Tyler's passing the torch over. So I'll just kind of drop us in and take us into some of that work. I have had probably one of the most difficult years of my life. I've witnessed some other people going through similar levels of tremendous difficulty and have brought some close friends back literally from the edge of suicide in the last, month and a half. And that on top of witnessing the devastation and the destruction that many of my closest friends and dearest family, as well as some of my blood family, have been experiencing in Western North Carolina, has been a sobering reality, to say the least, as I'm sure that is also the case for many of you out there. And when we're faced with these kinds of deep transformations and challenges, one of the first things that we can feel come up, and that's part of the process, is to feel like we're a victim of somebody or something else. And sure, you can say that, we're all victims of Gaia's climate change and the nature of accelerated storms. You can also say we're victims of ephemeral and or things that, may or may not be true in terms of whether or not that hurricane was magnified or directed or weaponized in some kind of way. And there are a lot of theories about things like that. And there's also a huge amount of data that suggests that that's not the case. But it's difficult to work our way through all of that information because the reality is that it's unclear right now what some of the technological powers may be. And it's unclear how much acceleration of climate change is actually occurring on the planet. Not to mention, it's hard to tell what's really going on in the deeper spiritual landscape of this time of change that we're in. And so the real key here that I'm getting at first is recognizing that just the perception that someone is doing this experience of life to you, that someone else or something else is causing you to have this suffering or to have this pain, that's the first place where we can collapse and where we can go into despair and where we can begin to lose a sense of traction in our lives around the command and the power and the gift that we actually have as infinite eternal beings. So it's one of the first things we need to look at. And sometimes, moving into a victim state on a collective level often isn't even as acute or as intense and potentially damaging as moving into a victim state towards the self, where we become our own perpetrator, judging ourselves and being upset and angry with ourselves for any way that we are not the absolute perfection. And inside of this, incredibly amazing game that we're inside of, this beautiful, exquisite, divine expression of evolutionary consciousness that we call space-time, Well, inside of that space, we realize that we are very powerful and that we're powerful creators. And a lot of the rising ascension movement is all about this awareness of being a powerful creator. You're creating your life, you're creating your destiny, right? And it's funny that we both have heavily accentuate that while also culturally play out over and over again the narratives of how all of these things are bad and doing this different stuff to us. So we're playing both sides of the game already, all the time. And essentially this idea that, we're not enough, that we're not going to be able to solve the problem, that we're not okay, that we're essentially incapable of overcoming the challenge and overcoming the weakness, that is commanding the reality of space-time. And so is the idea that someone's doing it to us, then we're more and more creating these experiences of other people having power over us. And so we are commanding all of that, but we can also use this idea, this awareness that we're creators, and we can actually weaponize it against ourselves, because then we can say, well, every pain that I experience, that's basically my fault. Every single suffering that I experience, that's my fault. So when things start going off and they're not going very well, we can start to spiral into patterns of judgment, which essentially are us, pounding down on ourselves over and over and over again while we're already suffering, while we're already in the experience of the pain and the difficulty. So what do we do about this? How do we actually move out of and through these patterns and these processes? Well, a lot of this dynamic that's going on is connected to a psychological triangle. And this psychological triangle is all about this play that people get in energetically between perpetrator and victim and hero. And for all of us, we have different aspects of us that want to be the hero. We want to save people. There's aspects of us who are afraid of, or, in some cases, not so afraid of perpetrating and hurting other people. And then there's always the dance of the victim, where the things are happening to you and you're a victim of circumstance that is outside of your control. Now, this being an energetic dance, it is part of reality. It's part of what we're experiencing out here. You can absolutely say that, when you see a wolf, catch a bird, the bird is a victim to the wolf's action, right? The wolf has eaten the bird. And you can also see many, many circumstances where someone is in trouble or there's someone that needs help, and you step in and you bring your resources, you bring yourself, you bring your skills, you bring your abilities, and you help that person out of that situation, and you're the hero of that situation. These are real dynamics and real constructs, but internally, they're usually just playing out in the mind. And when we're playing them out in our own head, then we are actually creating the energetic dynamics inside of ourselves, where we can get caught inside of a loop of this game. We can get caught at the idea that we're meant to be the hero that saves everything, especially when you're coming into greater states of awakening and you start to realize that you are interconnected to all of reality, and that you can feel the trees like the hairs on your arm, and you can sense things before they happen, and you can feel this sense of purpose and this sense of eternality, the aspect of yourself that has lived lifetime after lifetime after lifetime and come here for some great purpose, for some great desire of your soul, and go so far down the road of the heroic idea and the heroic complex that essentially it becomes Messiah complex. And you start thinking, well, maybe I'm supposed to be the savior of everyone. I'm supposed to be the one who absolutely fixes the entire planet myself, And unfortunately, when that psychological construct comes in, while realizing you're divine and God is an absolutely beautiful and sacred and perfect thing, when people began to demand that other people see them as their savior, that's where it starts to become a really big problem. And I unfortunately lost a friend, last year, who went down this pathway and was so convinced he was the hero of all Earth and all mankind, and began to propagate ideas that he was the empire of New Universalis of the planet. And I, asked him at one point, what's going on? And he's like, I have to let you know, I am the Messiah. And I was like, congratulations. I'm so glad that you've realized you're God. Like, welcome to the club. Let's go. Like, what do you want to create? And he's like, no, you don't understand. There can only be one true king of the world to come. And that's when I knew there was a problem. That's when I knew that there was an issue going on, because from then on, there was a pattern of essentially isolation, where he isolated himself as the one true king and made everybody else supplicant to that, and tried to make everybody else serve that, and claim that nobody else has the powers, the abilities, the knowledge, the consciousness, and etc. And so when you're caught in this kind of game, this kind of thing is happening to someone in your life or a loved one, what's happening is they're actually isolating themselves by creating these conflicts and getting caught in these deep energetic control dramas. So the second key is really about acknowledging and becoming aware of how that energy plays out, what's moving in the field, what's actually going on, because this is not just happening in isolation, right? So when we have these thought patterns going on inside of our heads, or we're experiencing this kind of psychological pattern in somebody else, well, it's emanating, and that emanation is radiating out into the field, and it's bouncing off of things. So have you ever noticed how sometimes if you get really self-conscious and you're like really worried about how you look or what you're wearing, like, and you're trying to kind of adjust yourself and like make sure you're good, then you'll have people, and they notice that you're uncomfortable. They notice, and it feels like the amplification of the awareness of the other person is amplifying to your fear. And I mean, that can get really, really strong at different times, depending on the specific moment and the dynamic in our life. We can literally see our fears projected out of us and issued back to us almost immediately, when we're in a strong state. Similarly to when we are in states of love and in states of compassion and grace and looking for synchronicities and seeing the pattern in things and feeling good about our lives, all of a sudden life just is showing us life is good, life is good, life is good. It's magnifying around us. It's bouncing back at us. We're literally radiating light out into the universe and at the level of the fabric of space-time. And as we're resonating these waves and entangling with different things all around us, happening all the time, all the protons in our body connecting to the structure of the universe, communicating data, storing that data in all the matter around us and bouncing it back at us. So the objects around you are storing the memory, they're storing the information, they're storing the energetic states. This is why, the idea that you can, use a crystal for certain kinds of healing and store magic in that crystal goes way beyond the crystal. The crystal's just a really well organized set of protons that happens to be even better at storing memory. But just like your hard drive on your computer, the desk, the chair, the things around you, all of these things are storing a part of your experience. And so how we start to change our relationship with these things becomes what is so important. Just like inside of our own heads, how we change the relationship to ourselves is so critical, and the relationship that we feel in regards to others, how we're actually relating. This is an absolutely critical phase of the development process, the self-development and awakening process, because you can say that the mind will come into these states of full awareness of the self, of the infinite past of the self, the infinite future of the self. This is sort of the totality of the astral field, or the solar plexus field, is being aware of ourselves as an infinite eternal being. But the moment that you cross that threshold, you're now in a new game, and that game is the causal field. It's all about our causal relationship, how we are in connection with ourselves, with each other, with each and every idea and each and everything. Now, that has all kinds of interesting applications and implications, such as, for example, if you are struggling with and challenged in the area of finances, which lots of people are right now. Why? Because we're under a gigantic game and spell that's telling us all that we're in debt, that the economy's crashing, that there's no money out there, that no investors have money. All of these things are stories. And we can go into a state where we're now stressed about everything, and whether we're going to have enough, and are we going to make it through this month, and can we get to this next threshold? Believe me, I know this experience so well. And as soon as you start changing your relationship to the things around you, and you start actually checking in, like you can even do muscle testing, like, is this shirt that I'm wearing making me money? And actually, could the objects all around me in my life, could those things make me money? Are there things that are in my life around me that are not helping me make money, that are actually taking away from my money, from my growth and my wealth? That kind of spell work is actually about recognizing and recoding our relationship to all the things in our lives as reflections of our abundance, to start seeing how and what things around us are actually able to amplify our wealth and our capacity to hold wealth. And there's many, many deeper levels that we can go down that pathway. I'm doing an in-person and online workshop called Keys to the Kingdom coming up on November 9th. And you can go to my website, adamapollo.com, to learn about that event and register that event. You can watch it online from home. Or if you're in the Phoenix, Arizona area, it's in Scottsdale. So it's in that area, and come and join me in person. And we're going from this journey of experiencing energetics and understanding the dynamics of the fundamental field of energy inside and outside, psychologically, mentally, emotionally, physically, through the process of really getting to know the unified physics of what's actually happening and the tactile nature of what's happening, and applying that to different specific, really, really important gifts. Like, for example, how to establish sovereignty inside of this matrix and inside of this system. And establishing sovereignty is not just about owning that you're God. It's not just about recognizing that you're an infinite eternal being. It's also about how you act within the system and play with this in this system. And if you're in the United States, most of you have realized at some point that you're a 16th Amendment citizen and 14th Amendment citizen, and that many of the things that you think of as fundamental, inalienable rights are actually capable of being taken away from you. And there happens to be an old key code to all of this that was built in by the founding fathers. They were seeking to avoid the kind of systemic problems that a lot of us are dealing with now in countries all over the world, but especially in the United States, where there actually is no longer an actual democratic choice going on. There is a complex set of oligarchies who are running and controlling the things that are happening through capital control, corporate control, lobbying, and there isn't actually a choice between two different options here. The two-party system and the way that's operating is totally illusionary. And in fact, the more extremist it looks, the more liberating one side or the other looks, the more their game is working, because essentially they're working to create this slingshot to push energy in different directions by creating oppositional waves to either side. And you'll see this over and over again. Those of you out there who are elders, who have really been watching the game between the Democratic and Republican parties, have certainly probably witnessed this for a very, very long time. And that's another really essential key, is the key to memory, to recognizing that the past and what we've experienced in this life is full of all of these pattern codes of wisdom, cycles, and unfoldings. And each of these unfolding patterns that's happening, that's happened throughout our lives, can actually help guide us as a navigational map to sensing what's coming. But it turns out that a lot of the map is hidden, and the mysteries that you can't see in the map are actually baked into patterns of the longer now, which is your soul's journey through time. And the more you discover your past lifetimes and open up to those and begin to actually integrate and experience the memories of those past times, as well as connect to and begin to realize and begin to be able to identify people that you know now who you've known in prior times, suddenly the map starts to become more articulated. You're able to start actually becoming aware of the cartography of your soul's journey and what your purpose and fulfillment of that purpose has looked like in lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. And that starts to essentially give you a guidance system to how you're navigating the now, to knowing where all of these different gifts are that you have used in different times, and how those different gifts can come together and integrate into the phalanx of yourself, converging at the point of this moment in what you are going to do next, what you are going to do now, how you are going to be, treat yourself, act, hold yourself, and move in this world as a soul that is unlimited, that is got so much experience behind it, that really the capability that you seek in almost anything that you desire to do, usually a lot of those capabilities are already baked inside of you. And it's a lot easier to regain skills through remembering how to do something than it is to start from scratch and do something entirely new that you've never done before. Now, that's also part of the fun, right? Because as you map your map and you see the things that you've done and the gifts that you have, you can also see where your weaknesses have been. You can see where your challenges have been. You can see where there are things that you haven't yet learned, things and ways that you can grow now, and new things that you can try and discover. And occasionally things you maybe haven't done in 10,000 years, are now opportunities again in this very dynamic and quickly changing world that we're in. So the final key that I'll be sharing at that workshop is known as the key of divinity. And this is probably my favorite. Well, because after all, it is the favorite. It is the thing. It is the ultimate, is our relationship with the infinite eternal and how we shape that relationship. There are so many, ways that with the movement of ascension and a lot of the consciousness that is moving through this specific part of the growth process, that we get a little caught up in being God. Just, I'm God. I know everything. I have the power to do anything. And we may hold this knowing of this oneness without actually having a very direct experience of that, because you don't know necessarily what's going to happen next month, and you're not in a place where you have that infinite knowledge, and things are surprising and things come into your life that you weren't aware of, and so you're not actively actually in the experience of your infinite eternal state. So how do you get to that? Well, there's all of these, you know, what I would say masculine traditions of spirituality, where the work is actually to reduce all of your attachments, let go of everything, purify the self, and come into, after total release of your individuated physical, emotional, and mental self, into a state of divine realization, samadhi, you know, the state of nirvana, the experience of the infinite eternal bliss of the void. And the pathway to that, the experience of that, the pathway to it is a process of shedding. I say it's a masculine pathway because, very much like if you've done any polarity studies, David Data, relational studies, it's also a really amazing area to get into and to get to know. Tantric work, you begin to recognize that the act of trying to get to the end goal of total release from the bounds and the binds of the duality of the universe is the masculine going in a direction, seeking a completion to where then it can relax and it's done. I got to get to that moment. I got to get to that state. That's the goal. And the beauty is that, you know, you eventually realize the direction is inward, and that direction is to the source itself, and that you are relinquishing all of the things in order to let go of everything so that you can have everything. And when you have that moment and you have everything, then guess what? Something else is going to occur. And that something else that's going to occur is that you might be chilling in infinite eternal bliss for a seemingly timeless eternity, because there really isn't any sense of coming and going from that space. It's just when you're there, you're there. And you do know what's going to happen next month. You do know what your whole life has been about. All of it is present and clear and resonant and gorgeous in its perfection and simplicity. And then you have to pee. You have to get up. You're gonna go eat. You know, you tired. You're gonna put yourself to sleep. You feel your body. You know, your meditation posture. Suddenly, there goes the shoulder. You know, something moves. Something in that infinite eternal moves as a differentiation from the infinite eternal. You begin to return back into the world of matter and life and reality and all of these different things being all different things, and you in relationship with those things, not you as all of those things, but you in relationship with those things. And this is actually the very, very core juncture of understanding of what the divine feminine path is actually all about, the goddess path. The goddess path is about recognizing and learning how to actually engage all of the differentiation in its exquisite perfection. In other words, isn't it beautiful that we get to be in duality and in relationship with different things? I mean, think about it. If you are God and you're infinite and you're eternal, and then you essentially divide yourself or go into an individuated soul experience of the self that's now split and different from all the other individuated soul experiences of themselves, and all of this beingness and consciousness is moving through time. And your entire purpose of doing that, if your entire purpose for doing that was to just go back and just be God again, well, what's the point, right? Because why did you do it in the first place? Why did you split yourself? Like, why did you move into a state of individuation separate from everything else, if the whole purpose of that was just to get back to being the thing that was unified before you separated? So maybe it's actually, there's both. There's actually getting to know where you came from as an infinite eternal being, as a God self, and that's an absolutely essential part of your remembering, your reawakening aspect of your path, so that you can know that you're infinite eternal in the midst of all of this, and to bring that consciousness into how you relate to everything, so that you can see the divinity and the beauty and the perfection in every single thing within this dual, seemingly separate, seemingly, outwardly expressed nature. And that is how we experience love. Love does not just does not have any true tangible sense without a sense of there being a relationship that's going on. Love is more than a feeling. It's more than just, it is also more than just you being in love with someone else, or you telling something that you love something, or you loving that tree because it's a really beautiful tree. Love is actually part of the essence of coherence within the universe. It's part of the underlying codex. If there was a key code that you could say could translate through and crack the matrix and hack the entire nature of the system, well, love is it. It is fundamental to everything. And why is that the case? Well, because the art of becoming separate, becoming differentiated, becoming an individual self is always a journey of how that differentiated self is going to be in relationship to everything else. And so you have to then ask, what is the highest possible potential of that relationship? What is the ultimate state of relationship itself that is in coherence, that's in beauty, that's in resonance, that's in a sense of giving and connection and love? It's love. It always comes back to love. And there's an inevitability to love. There's a magic to love. There's a potency to love. And while love continues to exist and move and drive everything, as simply as the love that's holding planets in orbit through the dynamics of gravitational relationship, well, what is all that doing? It's keeping everything in the right position, in the right dynamics, in the right coherent vibrational field to be in a healthy relationship to each other. Our distance from our star, if we were a little closer, we'd burn up. If we were a little further away, we'd freeze. We're in a coherent state of relationship. We're in love. Our solar system is an expression of the divine love. The unconditional light of the sun warming the ground and feeding the plants and, warming our skin is an expression of unconditional love. The galaxy, bringing all the stars in the entire galaxy together to what? To unify them, to bring them into coherence, aligned and dynamically dancing with each other. How else could we describe that but love? Love wants us to come closer together. It brings us together. It drives our power in terms of how we are in communion and creation with the universe. So what we're really learning how to do is love. What we're really going into the experience of by experiencing duality and separation, it's not a bad thing. It's about learning how to love. And the more we learn how to love ourselves and each other and the structure of space and the matter and the reality and everything around us, from the compost to the old constructions that are falling apart, to the new things that are being built, to the waste that we've created, and learn how to transmute that and transform it back into things that can serve and can create and can give. All of this is a dance of love. And so the divine feminine path is truly the path of divine love. It's the path of looking for the dynamic communication between you and the goddess, the embodiment, the mother, the matter, that's same word. So all these protons, all the stuff that's making up everything all around you, that's truly the body of the goddess. It's the body of the mother. And that has been the sacred wisdom passed down through time and carried by those of us who have come to understand the exquisite bliss and beauty of falling in love with your existence as a being that's chosen to individuate and to incarnate. And none of it takes away from the beautiful, divine, sacred union aspects that we can have returning to the one, because the dance of returning to the one and of experiencing the two and all the three and all things, that is the oscillation of the soul seeking to both remember who we are and what we are, and to relinquish the sense of attachment we have on how things look and how things need to be in order for us to be the perfection that we already are, and how to fall in love with the dance of all of the things, so that now we are in a creative process and we're moving with the power of that creation. So just want to check in, Neil, if we're still on time. I saw you pop in and out there. It's really a pleasure to be here with all of you. I hope that you'll come and join me in Phoenix, Arizona on November 9th. Again, that's through my website at adamapollo.com. And you can also register for that experience online. And yeah, a few other things that I'll cover, because it looks like we're still going for a bit more time, is that I'm going to get into the nature of sovereignty from a very practical standpoint around how you can create a trust web and establish sovereignty through operating as a trustee of a trust. And by doing that, you essentially start working at the level as a state citizen, which is the original state citizens that were the essential construct that was made as part of the original constitutional trust. So the Constitution was created actually as a modification, an evolved trust that was first started by the Declaration of Independence. The Constitution sought to create a more perfect union, a more perfect trust, in which the land and all the areas and the states of the United States would be essentially held in trust for the beneficiaries, which are the people of the states, and them being the ones who essentially, own it. But the grantor of this process is also the people. So the people say, all right, we're going to agree that we're going to put all of this land in this trust that then belongs to the people. And the representatives who will help to guide this process, those trustees will be essentially our elected officials. That's how it's going to work. We're going to elect people to different positions, and they're going to be the trustees of the trust on behalf of the people. But of course, we've lost quite a lot of that. And the way that this structure operates is such that it is outside of what we call statutory jurisdiction. And what that means is that, anytime you go into a courtroom, or you're dealing with a police officer, or you're dealing with any one of the representative members of the state, you're generally dealing with a facet where you're either in their jurisdiction or you're not. You're either inside of their ability to serve law or you're not. And there are many cases where, police officer pulls somebody over, but he's outside of his jurisdiction zone, and then there's no way that they can prosecute that case. Same thing is true in a courtroom. If you're not in jurisdiction of what that judge is capable of prosecuting as a case, then he can't prosecute that case. He literally can't. It's against the law, and he will lose his bar license if he does so. So what happens is when you create this kind of trust web, you're creating a vehicle that enables you to operate as a state citizen with a private contract that is no longer within the jurisdiction of the court system. And therefore, it can never be prosecuted in court, which means no one can ever sue you. Nobody can ever take that money. It doesn't matter. So if you ever wondered how some of the wealthiest people in the world, like Rockefellers and, you know, a lot of these biggest families in the world, how do they do this? How is it that some of the biggest, most wealthy people and bankers and stuff in the world have been able to do these horrendous crimes, by the way, pretty much in terms of financial crimes, and then when they go after them for the money to get the money back, they don't get any back. Nothing happens. The cases seem to evaporate. What goes on? Why is that? Where does it go? Well, the reality is that those things go into court, and a lot of these very powerful individuals simply show that they don't own the thing. They don't have the thing. The company, the thing that they think belongs to them, it doesn't. It's owned by a trust. And they go behind doors with the judge and they show the judge the trust situs and the trust information, and the trust corpus essentially establishes that it's outside of his jurisdiction. And then the judge comes back in and he drops the case. It's as simple as that. And this has been proven over and over and over again countless times. I mean, there's literally hundreds of Supreme Court cases you can pull up to learn about this and to see exactly how this works. And so if you actually want to save your assets and you actually want to protect that home, that property, that land, that car, that boat, whatever, from seizure, from anything, from creditors, doesn't matter. All of these kinds of things, you need to put it inside of a trust. You need to put it not only in a normal statutory trust, which you can go to any lawyer for and you can set up online, but you have to actually learn a little bit of the process of how to create a private, irrevocable express trust, which is a private contract between you and other people. You aren't asking the government for permission for it. You're going to notarize it yourself, and you're establishing this vehicle the same way the Constitution was established, the same way as people came together and made an agreement that established an entire country. You are doing that for you. You are doing that for your life and as a fortress that you can build around you. Now, there's some other really cool stuff involved with this, where I'll be going into the nature of the financial system and showing how when we lost the gold standard and our relationship to gold changed drastically to a point where now our money is not backed by gold. It's not backed by any actual thing other than the faith and trust and the glorious nature of the United States of America, you know, in the US. And internationally, it's the same. You know, you're trusting in your currency because it's backed by the treasury of the government and the country that you're in. Well, it turns out that there's a specific way that when our money in the United States was changed over into the hands of the Federal Reserve, they had to somehow keep the fact that our currency is a treasury note and also a Federal Reserve note. Now, this creates this really interesting backdoor and loophole, which I just learned about in the last couple of years and then have started using and implementing, which is essentially that it turns out there's hundreds of Supreme Court cases that definitively prove that income is not actually taxable. Now, I know when you hear that, you're like, what? Yeah, no, income is actually not what's taxable. What's taxable is the receipt and use of Federal Reserve notes. Why? Because the Federal Reserve note is a debt note. It's a record of a debt. And it, by its nature, has an excise tax placed upon it. It is a tradable commodity in a sense, in such a way, the same way as tobacco or liquor or other things that are specific kinds of tradable commodities have an excise tax placed on them. So when you receive Federal Reserve notes and you exchange Federal Reserve notes, you are by law required to pay an excise tax on those Federal Reserve notes. Therefore, when you're required to file your taxes, you tell them how many Federal Reserve notes you received and how much of those Federal Reserve notes you spent and what you spent them on, and when you can deduct certain things because you spent them on stuff that makes them tax deductible, right? Well, turns out you can also receive that money as treasury notes. And simply by demanding that you are receiving that money as treasury notes, when you file your taxes at the end of the year, you simply account for and show evidence for how you received those treasury notes from each of these different areas, how you got your income, you know, how you got in your payroll and your checks. Every time you received money, you're essentially documenting it as a demand for lawful money per 12 USC 411. And you show that evidence as part of your tax return to the IRS that all the income that you received was treasury notes and was demanded as lawful money. And guess what? The IRS takes a little extra time because they got to send it up to a special department that handles lawful money because it's been around forever. And after they review it, they're going to send you back all of your taxes, all of them. And if you haven't paid taxes because you didn't pay yourself with payroll or whatever, then you're not going to owe anything. You're going to have a 0 on your tax return. It's not going to come out to anything. And so this mechanism doing this has been one of the most powerful and amazing discoveries of my life. And I'm, happy to be sharing it with people and happy to teach people about this and how to do this, because for me, I did it as a guinea pig test on myself. Like, if this works, I mean, it's going to be a game changer. And I paid taxes all year by paying myself through payroll. And then I filed with lawful money in my tax return. And when I got that giant check back from the IRS, let me tell you, it was quite a moment of celebration for me. And this gets at a deeper level of this whole journey through these keys, which is actually about liberating the self. It's about realizing, again, just like we started with, you're never a victim to something else. You can always regain your own power, your own liberated sovereignty, if you're willing to command it, if you're willing to acknowledge it. If you're not, and you're not conscious of it, well, yeah, no, you're going to experience being a victim. Absolutely. And people will do things to you. You can make yourself as weak and as susceptible to the perpetrated violence of others, governmental, individual, corporate. You can make yourself as susceptible to those things as you are willing to allow. And when you change that allowance, you change that contract, and you start realizing, wow, it's interesting how much money you've paid over all these years in insurance. Are you really insured? Is that what's actually happening? Are you sure that you're safe now? Is that what that's about? When you're told you need to set up a savings account, and when you go to set up that savings account, you create it in the bank and you're going to get some interest, for all the money that you put in that account. But the amount of interest that you get is actually less than the amount that the dollar depreciates over time. And you've created a construct that you now need an account that's going to save you from what? From when you run out of money in other accounts, right? So now you've crafted a specific contract scenario where you've now decided that you are going to run out of money and you're going to need to be saved by your savings. Interesting, right? And the more we look at our lives and the more we look at these constructs, societal constructs, and the nature of this whole world that we've come to participate within, we start to see there's a lot of spells, a lot of magic, and a lot of that magic has a long period of lineage. It's existed for hundreds, thousands of years in some cases. And that lineage of magic is still playing through our language. It's involved deeply in the words that we use. In whatever language we use, we have all kinds of constructs that have been baked into that language over time. And many of the things that we say are actually crafted in such a way that they reflect and or create specific situations for us. And that's something that a lot of people that grow up and learn about some of the distance between some of the different kind of strata levels of finance and wealth in this country and in the world start to realize that the disempowerment that can happen is not actually just based on a lack of money or a lack of support or a lack of resources in certain areas of the world. The differentiation is actually that some of the language that's been ingrained within certain areas of economic strata has been designed in such a way so that there is a judgment, there is an effect that's occurring that's causing a state of economic depravity, for example, versus a state of economic thriving. So how certain people use language essentially is defining the ability for them to have and hold wealth. So have you questioned and looked at the way not only that you think about money, but the way that you speak, the way that you use your language to describe your relationship to it? If you grew up in a super wealthy family and your parents always had money, you probably grew up with very different language around money and around what is. When you have and you're aware of the having and you consistently expect and trust in the having, and you recognize that that having establishes certain things, and you recognize that money and wealth has the power to grow when placed in certain things in certain ways, investments, and you begin to recognize that assets are really what wealth is about from the beginning, then you look at certain things differently. So when you go to get a car, for example, the idea of a lease and or, paying monthly in a debt for your car suddenly is a lot less interesting or appealing than a path to buying that car. Why? Because you recognize that in purchasing the car, you have a sellable asset. However, that asset also is going to be depreciating. And therefore, you may not look at cars quite the same way. You might be more interested in purchasing cars for their ability to grow in value rather than depreciate in value. And most cars that most middle class, lower class citizens use, using this sort of classism approach to define these economic strata, then you realize that a lot of the cars that most people drive, they all depreciate. They're all going down in value. And interestingly enough, the cars that most of the super wealthy are driving, they're appreciating in value. They're rare. So they're like collector's items. And then you also can realize that this is true of homes and real estate and areas and all kinds of different things, that everything has either an asset recognition that is allowing it to enhance and increase in value, or it's got a continually depreciating value. And that's really the key to getting back to this understanding of our fundamental power, our fundamental language use, our fundamental choices in terms of how we move and how we operate within the world. Are we creating assets that are going to grow? Are we creating things that we can build upon? Are we creating foundations that our castles can stand on? Or are we creating short-term temporary constructs that are then going to just fall apart? next month? You know, is it more temporal? And that's in many ways how the power structure has been built on this planet. We can see that power structure expressed through the fact that many of the most amazing buildings and architecture that we see all around the world, all of these kinds of things were created by usually specific individuals or families, family offices. And those buildings are now key points to where money is seen, or assets and value are seen to exist within a city or within a landscape. They become the historical buildings. They become the buildings around which value increases. So by putting more energy into increasing the value in an area or in a neighborhood, then the person who owns more of that land and who owns more of the property or the real estate experiences an increase in value around it. This is all just a strategy. It's all just a game. And when we learn how to play this game and we get good at this game, I believe that a lot of our movement, our people, our tribe, this sort of rising tide of ascension sacred warriors out there, and priestesses and guides and guardians, the magi, the lovers, all of us who are in this journey of learning what it means to become planetary stewards. As we take the reins, as we actually do the work to understand the magic and the spells that we've been under, and we begin to transform them, we begin to stop participating in a lot of the division that's being driven between us. We stop operating as a limited citizen and start operating with the full power and right we have as a divine being on the planet. And we craft around us a kingdom and a fortress, a citadel that is protective of us and our families and our friends, and that supports and empowers the rise of consciousness and anchors it in potent ways. Then I believe we'll start to actually see ourselves shift this world in drastic and extraordinary ways, because we can't just do it on this sort of spiritual astral level. The ability for us to travel in our dreams or portal to other worlds and dimensions, to travel to other planets and to see extraterrestrial beings on the astral, all of those things are just guiding us towards how we implement the power of our sacred awareness into the physical world and into the matter around us, as we fall in love with the mother, as we engage with the goddess in this tantric dance of creating reality. We have a tremendous opportunity right now to look at how we can take this great field of our connection, this online place of communication, and ground it down into our neighborhoods, into our homes, into our properties, into our lives, into our eco villages, into the projects that we do that can change the world. And that's really what a lot of Core Nexus is all about. This planetary operating system that I'm designing and developing and have been building for many years, and that we're about 6 months away from a major public launch, raising more capital right now. It's been a tricky year in that space because a lot of funds overspent on AI, and many VCs and funds are raising money rather than investing money again. And the economic situation is not super great. But at the same time, we are in this massive transition, and new forms and new areas of wealth are moving into position in order to help liberate this entire planet with everything that's going on. So we're on track to a massive change, and the allies and the partners, they're all coming to the round table. And this sacred communion, this sacred trust between us of guardianship for the planet itself. This establishment of recognition of what it means for us to be in divine and sacred service to the world is what we are cultivating and convening together. And the system that I'm building is essentially a social operating system that gamifies regenerative impact. So imagine you had a decentralized dashboard system you could use to take back all of your social media accounts and data. That means everything you've ever created on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Now you are able to pull all of that together in one place, own and control it, and visualize it any way that you want. You can also leverage that information and AI tools and anything on your hard drive and leverage these AI tools to create any kind of digital product that you want. And whenever you make any digital product, you can automatically share royalties when you sell it with anyone else that you collaborated with. So if you had a friend make a piece of art that's in it, another friend made some music that's in it, somebody else made an awesome video that's in that course that you've packaged together, all of that comes together. And anytime that object sells, it distributes royalties back to your friends automatically. But also 1% up to 100% of that income that you're making, you can pass into whatever area of regenerative impact you care about. That could be planting trees, cleaning up beaches, cleaning up rivers, building community gardens, doing arts projects in cities, doing governance projects, infrastructure, you name it. And the money that aggregates in these impact wallets, these pools that people are donating to by making money, and there's just a little bit of their money that they're sending into those impact funds as they're making money on the system, and they're earning points for those impact funds that they're passing along. That money in those funds we attach as bounties on real world missions. So instead of just another event system where you can, create a party, that you want to do next weekend or next month, imagine you have a templated system where you can go in and you can create a mission to go clean up the beach or to go plant a community garden. And you've got the structure, it's got the education baked in and everything else. And when you submit that mission, it goes up and fund councils look at it. And if it looks complete, they'll attach a bounty to it. If it's incomplete, they send you a note. This is how you can make this complete. And when the bounty gets attached to that mission, you, 10 people, maybe if it's $1,000 bounty, you go and you work on building that community garden. You take some selfies, or you spend a couple hours on the beach cleaning up trash on the beach, take some selfies, take some video. You have a moment together. You get to feel that pride that Mr. Beast helps create in so many people and so many of our youth of doing impact and doing good and how good that feels. Yeah, you made the difference, right? Except that most of us don't have time to do that because we're trying to make money and we're trying to work, right? So what happens is you go do an impact mission in Core Nexus, you make change, and all of a sudden, as soon as you've validated the completion of the mission, boom, bounty hits your wallet. Suddenly you and everybody else that was part of that mission just got paid fatty for doing good in the world. And you earn badges and you earn points and you earn ranking. And this beautiful and complex system has been in development for a long time. So we've been cooking all of the pieces of this puzzle for exactly how this works. And it's quite exquisite now. And it's looking like that kind of mission system can be used in all kinds of different and powerful ways. Unfortunately, it's not ready yet, so we weren't able to use it immediately for the response to Hurricane Helene. But next year, if there are similar challenges that we face, environmental disasters and things like that, we'll be able to leverage this mission system, coordinating resources, people, energy, tracking what's happening, mapping what's happening, and knowing exactly where and how our forces are moving to do good in the world and actually make a difference in these kinds of situations. And if your whole interest is just in the corporate world and you just are all about your 9-to-5 job and that's your thing, well, you're probably in a company where you've experienced the challenge of what happens when all the ideas are just coming from the top down, being pressed down from the positions of the executive suite through the managers down into the workers. And this pipeline of ideas and information flow going down can, one, be oppressive, where you always just feel like your boss is telling you what to do rather than you get to choose what to do. And that just feels, it wears us down. It feels weary. It's like, oh yeah, the boss says I got to do this again today. And a lot of times you come into contact with the issues and the problems that are going on in that company or in the world, but there's no way to get that information back up to the top. If only we could do this, we could change our whole company, right? Anybody out there who's worked in the corporate world will 100% recognize this. You know, if only they would listen, right? Well, this system can be used inside that corporate landscape as well, because what it does is it allows a decentralized sourcing of information, ideas, and concepts of how to make change and what could happen and what needs to happen. Missions being created from workers throughout all the different levels of the organization, from management, from workers, from everybody. And now there's a mission dashboard where the executives and the operational team, administrative team, can look at those missions, see the issues that are going on, and then begin to sequence them into a pattern that is going to actually improve the company in amazing ways. And then as the team accomplishes those missions, those groups also earn bounties, they earn rewards, they earn a little extra income, they earn some acknowledgement. And maybe if you're a really brilliant mission creator, you might just be an executive assistant, or you might just be working, you know, as a call receiver in the customer service department. But your real calling is that you're capable of seeing the movement and momentum and the growth of the company and where it actually needs to go. And so you're creating missions that are leading that company in the right direction. And suddenly you're not going to just be a customer service person on the phone anymore, because the people at the top of the company can see the brilliance and the magic that you're creating right there and bring you up and raise you up into that power. So I'm really, really deeply interested in systemic change and in applying new kinds of concepts and the ways that we can look at our reality as a malleable construct that is in response to who we truly are as creators, and that we as creators and sovereign beings can rise to our great power and to our great truth as divine beings and go forth into the world with this gift, falling in love with all of the other divine beings and expressions of divinity all around us, and translate that process of awakening consciousness, that game that we can play to improve our coherence and dynamics with each other and with the world, and actually bring that into our technology, bring that into our societal constructions, bring that into our eco-village building processes, and how we learn how to engage this world and change the physical matter. I'm in the sense of, on a track to ascension. I would say my idea of the ascension that I'm looking forward to is getting on a starship and having the technology to steward this planet even more efficiently and effectively, as well as recognize that we're not alone and that we have an entire galaxy, an entire universe to explore out there. Strange new worlds, new civilizations to go where no one has gone before. And this journey, is one that is, I'd say, so sacred and so beautiful. And it's a long one. So be patient with yourselves out there and trust in the journey, trust in the unfolding. All of this is happening for a reason, every single moment of it. Can you look at your life as a gift? Can you see every single thing in your life as part of the wealth of the creation of the experience that you get to have? Can we change our perspectives about each other and about who we are and begin to see us all as the people who can rise and actually take back stewardship of this planet for ourselves, for our children, and for children for 7 generations to come. Thank you. Blessed be. We got this. I love you.
Adam, that was just filled with valuable information, and wow, what an amazing speech. And it built a little bit upon what I remember earlier this year. We spoke on the Immersive podcast, and you spoke a little bit about Core Nexus and the ideas behind it. And it seems that you've been hard at work elaborating and working on how to implement these ideas. The one question I wanted to ask you was, what's your opinion? You know, I don't know if other people got this feeling when talking about this kind of thing. And it's, you know, just like everything, there's a duality to it. It does, of course, sound like there is an ability for something like that to potentially dip into the arena of things that we kind of talk about with like social credit scores and things like that. But what it sounds like to me is that it's the positive spectrum of that duality. Is that kind of what your vision is for this, where it's similar to that social credit score system, but in a take back our power, in an altruistic, in a unified way that's ours and sovereign? Would that be adequate or correct in saying?
Yes, and it's way too easy to throw it in a box that way. Trust Graph is an open source piece of technology that we built many years ago. You can learn about it at trustgraph.is. Trustgraph is. And Trustgraph is a system for agent-centric reputation development. What that means is how I perceive and trust others is actually what matters. In other words, my own perspective of who to trust and how I trust them is always going to be different from everybody else's. Always. So your trust graph's different from mine. Mine's different from Michelle's. We all have our own. And unlike the Chinese social credit score, which is leveraging everyone's credit to a standard that is created by a centralized power source and government, in which they're deciding what's trustworthy and what's not, you are deciding what's trustworthy and what's not for yourself. So that engine is going to run underneath the entire social strata, enabling people to be their own algorithm. You decide the algorithm. You're choosing what you're trusting and what you don't, and you have visibility of it. So you can see when you start to get a little bit in an echo chamber because you've been just trusting things in this one area, and you start to get curious. Well, wait a minute. What about these other colors? How come I don't have any trust in people in those areas? And as you go to explore that, you're actually going to learn about new things. You're going to learn about new content. Now, from the standpoint of impact, that's a little bit more organizational centric trust graphs. So if I'm an organization that's essentially sponsoring or putting bounties on beach cleanups, I also know what's needed for a good beach cleanup to happen or for a good community garden to be built. So the rewards and incentives that come from these organizational centric impact projects, you're going to be receiving the trust and the benefits from those organizations. Now, also, you can just really grow your baseline recognition as someone doing good in the world simply by earning impact points. And that just means if I sell stuff and I'm donating to impact, I'm literally earning points in the exact impact sector that I'm donating to. So you can see over time that I'm really into planting trees because I've got tons of tree planting impact points. And when you go to my dashboard, you can literally see how many trees have gotten planted because of my donations. So this is gamifying consciousness from a state of, oh, I'm so cool because I've got 100,000 followers. Woo. And of course, I didn't tell anybody that I paid people for those followers because like I really needed people to know how cool I am. Right. And so a lot of them don't even engage. And instead, I'm like, dude, I like cleaned up 5 rivers last month. Yeah. Like, check it out. You know, like how much more substantial does that feel?
You're modeling that Gandhi quote, be the change you wish in the world.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right, Michelle.
Very good insight, Michelle.
Thank you, Adam. I'm holding you so tenderly in my heart as you navigate the space that we're all navigating right now. And I really appreciate your authentic sharing in the very beginning of your presentation. I want you to know I'm holding your family and your friends in my heart. And I'm just feeling so grateful. Tyler and I were back and forth in the private chat. Like, I'm so glad you had this extra time to go over and to share these practical visions that, some people are sharing in the chat that the world's not quite there yet. But who are the ones to make the world quite there yet?
Not
And
going to
it's
be
all,
there until you take it there.
It's
yeah,
us.
it's
all
all of
us.
us. And you're giving us a pathway forward. You're giving us a vision that we can, every one of us is a piece of the puzzle. I will always say, my husband, we're polar opposites, but we complement each other, and then our daughter comes into the mix and she has her own signature that she brings. And so not everybody's going to see things the same, but what we can do is work with each other and know that we're all pieces of this puzzle, and that we can support each other through this process when we drop the push of trying to be the one that's seen, like you talked about earlier when you were talking about the drama triangle. And I used to listen to the concept of this drama triangle, and I would always forget the third piece. I would remember victim and perpetrator, but I can never remember that rescuer piece. And then I was like, oh crap, it's because I'm trying to be that, and had to really remove myself and say, not my journey, and go back to that neutral. But Tyler, you are incredible, and thank you for keeping up in the chat with people. You really inspired a lot of dialogue, Adam, with going forward in that. And I want to respect your time because I know that we went way over, but your tap dancing was the best tap dancing I have ever seen since on radio.
I was like, all right, I guess I'll just keep going because they're not popping up. I was like, I thought we were only doing 30 minutes, but
yeah.
Okay. There's something else.
Neil is
stop me from talking.
Yeah. You was great. And Tyler and I were saying, yeah, let him keep going.
Let him go. Yeah.
Fire. Yeah. And is it you're going to be in Phoenix or Scottsdale?
Yeah.
You said
it's Scottsdale, but yeah, Phoenix area, just because most people don't know. If I say Scottsdale, they're like, where's that?
Yeah.
It's like, it's like Springfield. It's like,
True.
I'm going to be in Springfield. And people are like, in which of the 48 states that there are Springfield?
Yeah.
So Phoenix, Arizona area, in Scottsdale in particular. And that's on, again, November 9th. And and tickets are available through my website. There's limited seats, but I think I still have maybe another 10 seats left, maybe 15.
What's the website where people can go to get those tickets?
You can just go to adamapollo.com and just scroll down and you'll see it. It's called Keys to the Kingdom. And that's where I'm going to be getting into the key of awareness, the key of connection, the key of memory, the key of sovereignty, and the key of divinity. And really deep dive into each of these specific pieces and practical applications of that work that can literally change your life and pull you back from the edge of despair and transform your experience of whatever challenges you're going through and start to harness your power again.
Beautiful. I actually might come.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
It's Maura's birthday, 11/11, and mine is 11/5. Mine is on Tuesday. And so Maura and I, we're doing a Unity Now experience with Deborah Giusti and Scott Katamas and Adrian of Disclosure Fest and Anna Stara. And that'll be on 11/11. So we were thinking about doing it maybe near Sedona. So we might be in that area.
Cool. Yeah, so, if you're in Sedona, come down for sure. Let me know and come. But try to let me know in advance if you can do it, just so I can hold you a couple spots too.
Thank you, Adam.
Yeah,
thank you.
Of course, it's great.
And Tyler, thank you. You're in England right now. Is that what you said?
I am. I'm in Newquay, Cornwall, England. I've been traveling around, well, Europe really, but this is my current stop. So yes, I am in England.
Awesome.
Mm, mm.
Awesome. I love the energies that are flowing through. And thank you to every one of our audience that really interact a lot in the chat room. I really appreciate all of the dialogue. And today was another very impactful day. We had 3 speakers today, not as many as our other days, but very, very impactful.
Yes,
How can I get to the
Oliver,
chat if I want to chat on the
Adam.
other part of the stream?
I see it where it says comments. I don't know where you.
2 sections of comments
yeah,
and private chat. They're 2 little tabs, I think.
Thank you. Great.
Yeah.
No, I love it. Thank you. Just
A
give
lot
me
of great
chance.
comments in there. I think people were really, I know people were really feeling what you were saying, Adam. And I think what it is, in an event like this or in conferences like this, we do, and you touched on this, we touch on grand ideas and astral travel and, touching base with, extraterrestrial and interdimensional beings and such. But there is that ever begging tap on the shoulder of, okay, how do I implement this into the current, for lack of a better word, 3D matrix that I actually inhabit with my physical body? And those are very important questions to ask that I think sometimes we avoid. And you touched on them so very eloquently. And I just want to thank you for that. That's very important. It's important for us to develop spiritually and meditate and learn all those types of things. But there's also got to be a practical application and a real change to the here and now that we live in as a collective. So I just want to say thank you for that.
Yeah, my pleasure, brother. My pleasure. And yeah, that's the dance, isn't it? We gotta download the higher templates first, because if you just try to go at it from the same level of thinking, it ain't gonna work. So you got to get to the higher templates, the higher consciousness. How do they do it on other planets, actually, right? And then bring that down and bring it into our infrastructure. Like, let's get real. Let's build together. Let's create some new structures for how all of this can work, because that's really how we're going to break it through.
Thank you.
Amen to that.
Thank you for the vision. Yes. Well, on that note, I'm going to go run and walk my dogs. They're just begging to get out. But I thank you all for being here. I'm going to sign off now and have a beautiful rest of your weekend. We'll see you back here on day 6 tomorrow. Love you all so much. Mwah.
Aloha.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, OliverHuntley. Thank you, Alan Steinfeld. And of course, always, thank you to Neil Gore and Portal to Ascension for holding this space for us today. And most of all, the biggest thank you to everybody who took time out of their day to come and see the speakers today or over the past few days. Those of you who might plan on stopping in over the next few days, it means the world to everybody at Portal to Ascension, everybody who's speaking, and everybody who's a part of this event across the world. Even though we may not know who each other are, there's so many people across the globe witnessing all of these speakers, and it truly is infusing the timeline we are in right now with a higher state of consciousness, a higher positive intention. And that, I believe, is what the vision for this event was. So just a huge, massive expression of gratitude to all of you, everybody, each and individually and collectively. I mean, I can see it both ways. I do want to say, if we could hold just a couple second moment of silence for the state of Florida right now. I am a native Floridian, and they are really going through not just Florida. There are, of course, other states in the United States that are having some trouble with these storms and such right now. We'll touch on Wyoming is dealing with some wildfires. They're not being covered very heavily. If we want to have just a 3-second moment of silence for Florida, I think that would be worthy. And anybody else who's a victim across the world of natural disaster, etc., anything that we are dealing with as human problems. Thank you all again for being here. I'm Tyler. I am the host of the Immersive Podcast. So, shameless plug, feel free to check it out. Thank you all, and we will see you tomorrow. If you have any questions, feel free to check out Adam's website. Alan and Oliver, they all have websites which they mentioned. So if anything you heard today, please go ahead and check it out. I promise they want you to check it out. We will see you all tomorrow. Awakening of Humanity, day complete. Bless you all. Light, love, and of course, magic.